Before we begin, let's introduce ourselves, starting to my left.
Gary Casada.
Charlene Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mike Fournier, Mayor.
Ann Vara.
Doug Hedges, City Planner.
Ann Beakey.
Dan Godak.
Okay, we have a quorum. Before we move on to B, Mr. Hedges, do you have a suggestion for us to amend the agenda?
There was a suggestion that the agenda be amended somewhat this evening to bring forward items under other business 1 and 2, the 2 sign variance applications to be handled after new business items 1 and 2 and before the public hearings. That way, so those petitioners would not have to wait through what could very well be two rather lengthy public hearings. So they could, those petitioners would not have to wait through that and could take care of the business before we get into that.
The motion?
Yes, I believe so.
Is there a motion to amend the agenda to move letter F under E2?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Godek. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Beakey. Any discussion on this? I'm not seeing all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so item F is now moved under E, after E2. Moving on to item B, this is the approval of minutes from October 8th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve?
Also move.
Moved by Ms. Douglas. Any support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada. Any discussion? Not seeing all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. Okay, the next item is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there, I'll pause there for a moment. I just want to make a note that under old business for the site plan, this is the communications tower. That is not a public hearing. If you want to speak on that, we could open up public comment to agenda items. Is there a discussion on that from the planning commission?
I'm sorry, where are we going here?
Well, at the last meeting, we opened up public comment on non-agenda items, and I didn't know if the commission wanted to do that again for this one in particular.
Anyone here to speak on it?
I mean,
It's not a public hearing, so.
right, so I would think that public comment anybody who wants to talk about that will comment during public comment?
There isn't any though under site plan, under old business,
Right, but
my
there's
point.
general public comment.
on non-agenda items.
Oh, it could be on
Yeah.
agenda items.
That's what I'm asking.
Oh.
If the commission is willing to accept that.
I don't think you can restrict public comment to, but I'll move that we make public comment, period.
Okay. Any support on that?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Okay, so next is public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on a non-agenda item or an agenda item that is not a part of a public hearing? Okay, not seeing, we'll close that. Moving on to old business, this is a site plan to install a 250-foot wireless communication support, AT&T Mobility, within off-street parking lot at 421 South William Street. Mr. Hedges.
At the last meeting, the Planning Commission again postponed decision on the site plan for the wireless communication support structure at this location. The special land use permit had been approved at a previous meeting, but the commission had postponed decision on the site plan. At the October 8th meeting, you directed the petitioner to revise their site plan with 5 items. Those were to move the support structure to the south, closer to a proposed easement, to increase the width of the green belt, to maintain placement of a wrought iron fence around the perimeter of the site, to screen the base of the support structure and the accessory equipment with a 10-foot masonry wall, and to add a bench for public seating at the corner of the 2 streets. The petitioner has submitted a revised site plan with those items. Don't have anything further to add, but we said they have moved the structure closer to the easement, and computer is not cooperating. Wonderful. Part for the course today. The greenbelt has been widened. It now has a width of 12 feet. It includes 17 deciduous trees and other plantings. They have an 8-foot decorative aluminum fence proposed around the perimeter of the site that would be powder coated to simulate a look of a wrought iron fence. They've also added a bench at the corner as requested. They do have specified a 10-foot masonry wall at the base of the structure. Around the compound, there is one sheet that still specifies a chain link fence at those locations, but we have noted that in our list of proposed contingencies, should the planning commission look to approve the site plan, that that sheet be corrected to specify the masonry wall as the other sheets do. The staff doesn't have anything further to add, but we can answer any questions the commission may have about the revisions.
Thank you. Any questions for Doc Hedges? Yes, Mr. Gordon.
In the first paragraph, the 5 items, the dimension is not shown on how far the structure is from the easement. We requested it be 5 feet, and that's not called out.
Yeah, we do note that it doesn't specify the exact distance, but it is within approximately at least 5 feet, if you, by reference of looking at the adjacent off-street parking space, which does have a nut width of 9 feet. The tower is placed within that, so the setback is obviously less than 9 feet, but the exact setback is not specified.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Is the petitioner here?
Good evening. My name is Brian Monahan. I'm an attorney for AT&T Mobility. With me today is Brad Briggs. He's the Director of Site Development for Fortune Wireless. They're the folks that put together the site plan and have worked with the city on these various changes. I don't have a lot to add to what Mr. Hedges has stated. As I understand it, there were 5 items. We've complied with all of those. I will point out that with respect to the various trees that will be planted around the 40 by 50 foot area, we have included in that an automatic irrigation system, so that won't be an issue. You've gotten the revised site plans. I've got some additional color plans if you'd like to look at them. They're nothing other than what we've already been provided. These are basically show the color of the various plantings, and then there's 2 attached elevation views that show what the plantings will look like. If you'd like, if I could approach, I'd be happy to pass those out.
We've got them in, we have them in front of us. Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Well, with that, all I can say is, we're anxious to proceed. We've done what the commission has asked us to do. We'd ask that the commission vote to approve the site plan so that we can proceed to the ZBA on the variance issues. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to address those or have Mr. Riggs address them.
Thank you. Mr. Casada.
And maybe this is for both Doug and the petitioner. One of the contingencies, it's a standard contingency, but it says all signage shall comply. Is there a sign plan for this?
There is a sign, and it's required by federal law, that's attached to the base of the tower and then to the door of our enclosure shelter. Those will be well below the tree line. They will not be visible. In fact, they'll be below the 10-foot masonry wall.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Godek.
There was my original point about the distance to the structure from the easement. Can that be called out? And there's some other discussion about lighting. Is there any uplighting or any lighting on this plan?
No. There's no lighting on the tower. There's no lighting on the base of the tower. The only lighting that will be there is the lighting that's already in the parking lot area. Excuse me. As to actually putting the setback on the plan, we'd be happy to do that. If you'd like to make the approval contingent upon that notation being made on the site plan, that's certainly acceptable. I mean,
Does anyone know what it is at this point in time?
Brad, do you happen to know what that is?
Sir, could you come to the microphone? Sorry, we just can't pick it up, but,
I can hardly talk anyway, so.
thank you.
The question was, how far did we move it? Yeah, we moved it a little over 28 feet, so we tried to match the 5 feet north of the easement.
You came close, but not quite?
I'm pretty sure that the surveyor got it 5 feet,
Okay.
maybe 4'11", but we can put it on there for sure.
Five or less is
I
good.
was just rushed for time to get everything put together in a short amount of time, so,
5 or under is great.
got it.
That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Ms. Douglas?
Move approval of the site plan?
Okay. Motion by Ms. Douglas, supported by
Support?
Mr. Casada. Any discussion on this motion?
Just, thank you. We told them what we wanted. They brought us what we asked for. I'm very happy to approve this site plan.
Mr. Godek?
I most likely will support this motion, even though I'm conflicted about it. No one likes one of these towers in their backyard, and if I lived next door to it, I sure would be putting up the fight not to have it, but there's a lot of there's benefit to the city, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Hedges, the maintenance on this, AT&T owns the property. The owner provides the maintenance to these plants and in the area. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, typically the property owner is responsible for, maintenance
Okay,
of a site and for compliance with site plans once they are approved.
okay.
If there was any issue, it would be, once things are constructed, of any potential discrepancy or violation, it would be the property owner that would be sought out to correct it.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this motion? Not seeing. There's been a motion to approve, supported by Mr. Casada. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You've been approved.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the only item under old business. Under new business, this next item is a public hearing. It's a special land use permit and site plan to renovate athletic fields for a private school, Shrine Catholic High School and Academy, with synthetic turf, lights, new building for ticketing, concessions, and bathrooms, and other improvements at 3500 West 13 Mile Road. Mr. Hedges?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to recuse myself on this.
Okay, thank you.
Noted that before I get into my staff report for the minutes. Okay, before you is a special land use permit and site plan application from the Shrine High School and Academy. They are making various improvements to their outdoor athletic facilities. The first of which involves the football and soccer field. The high school is proposing that site of the field be shifted somewhat to the north and west, and that the playing surface be resurfaced with a synthetic turf material. The movement of the field would also involve other improvements, such as replacing the bleachers on the south side of the football field, also installing a scoreboard. They would also add a sports lighting system to the football field. There would be 4 light fixtures that would be placed, 2 on the north side, 2 on the south side. Those light fixtures would have a height of 70 feet. There is also a building proposed a new building proposed as part of the improvements that would be toward the east end, the football field. The building is 1 story, would be used for concessions, for ticketing, and also for meeting rooms for teams that are playing in athletic events at the field. Further east of the proposed building, they would add additional off-street parking spaces that would have access to Yorba Linda Boulevard. Those would also connect to the existing parking lot that is south of the football field. The improvements would also continue on to the west side of the property, where the area would also be resurfaced with a synthetic turf material. This area would then be used for both a baseball and softball diamond and a practice field for football. They would also add a few other improvements. There would be a 300-meter track with 2 lanes that would surround the ball diamond and practice field. They would also add some facilities for field events such as the long jump and shot put, and it would also be a batting cage added toward the north end of the ball diamond. The property in question is actually zoned special redevelopment. Therefore, any use that is proposed does require a special land use permit and site plan from the Planning Commission, which is why it has been scheduled for a special land use permit review. There are some items under the special redevelopment zoning that would not be necessary in this application, such as a development agreement from the City Commission. Those are only required when it's, a total redevelopment of the site. The special redevelopment district was created not necessarily for uses that are still viable and operating. It was created for redeveloping obsolete sites, so there would not be a development agreement required in this situation. One of the items that is of note is the existing football field does have an existing encroachment into the Yorba Linda right-of-way. The part of the existing facility that encroaches past the property line and into the right-of-way is an old cinder track that used to surround the football field. The eastern part of that was taken out when the new gymnasium was built in 2007, but there is still a small portion that exists in the north and extends, as I said, beyond the north boundary line and into the Yorba Linda right-of-way. The petitioner is proposing to maintain an encroachment into that right-of-way. On the site plan, I can try to point it out with the mouse cursor. It is this area right in here where a portion of the football field and some of the landscaping and one of the light towers would actually be placed within the Yorba Linda right-of-way. That's not something the Planning Commission can officially approve, although it can be on a site plan. But to maintain that right-of-way encroachment, the petitioner will need to seek a license agreement from the City Commission to maintain items that would be placed beyond the property boundary and encroach into the right-of-way. It appears that the right-of-way encroachment is not getting any larger. It's still basically the same area where the old portion of the old track still extends into the right-of-way. As for off-street parking, staff looked back at the past site plan that was approved for the new gymnasium by the Planning Commission in 2007. At that time, 2 parking calculations were made, one for the school classrooms and gymnasium combined, and then a separate one for the football field. The parking for that site plan was approved in that manner based on the condition that the classrooms would not be occupied when the football field was used for an event with spectators, and that the gym and football field would not be used for events with spectators at the same time. We've maintained the same parking analysis with the additions that are proposed. The only ones that would affect the off-street parking is the new bleachers. But in running calculations for the football field separately, and then the classrooms and gymnasium separately, the proposed site plan would comply with off-street parking requirements that are contained within our zoning ordinance. A few notes regarding the exterior lighting. As I believe I mentioned earlier, there are 4 fixtures. Each would have a height of 70 feet. one of which would be included in the right-of-way encroachment, which would have to be addressed within a license agreement approved by the city commission. One thing, though, under our current zoning ordinance, we don't have lighting standards that apply to lighting for athletic facilities. Most of our lighting standards are designed for basically off-street lighting and parking lots. So it does run into some issues. Under our zoning ordinance, a maximum light fixture height of 15 feet would be allowed at this location. Also, there's a maximum illumination level of 10-foot candles that would also be applied to this site. However, the fixtures they're proposing do exceed that, obviously, height. They're 70 feet. Also, the photometric grid that they submitted, there are spots within the football field that would be above the maximum permitted illumination levels that are allowed. However, if the commission does go forward with considering the special land use permit and site plan, the petitioner would not need to seek variances for the ZBA for those items. The commission would be able to handle them with their consideration of the site plan. Under our lighting standards, the commission can vary or waive photometric grids that do exceed maximum permitted illumination levels. And then, of course, under special redevelopment zoning, the commission is allowed to waive or modify zoning ordinance standards for special redevelopment site plans, as similar as they can under plan unit developments and conditional zoning. So both the lighting issues could be handled under the site plan review. I don't have anything else to add specifically regarding the plan. Again, any motion for approval of the site plan would need to address the lighting issues and also recommendation regarding the right-of-way encroachment to the city commission. I don't have anything further to add and be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hedges? Mr. Godek?
You mentioned parking. Before, from what I can read, it currently is at 202. And what's it gonna be if this gets approved?
Well, actually, right now, if the improvements are made, they would wind up with a total of 202 parking spaces. The site right now, I believe, has 173 parking spaces. And again, those are all contained within the area south. The new parking area between the gym and the new proposed building would have 29 spaces. So the result would be the school would wind up with 202 total parking spaces.
So, I just want to restate that for my, just so I'm clear. Currently, it's 173, and if this gets approved, it's 202?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Beakey?
On the restriction that's in the memo, that's the point two that you said was from 2007 in terms of holding different events at the same time related to, I'm misunderstanding that restriction is related to the notion that there's not sufficient parking if there were two events at the same time or school was in at the same time a facility was used. Is that correct? Is that why it's in there?
That's correct. If they applied the standard to where the classrooms, the gymnasium, and the football field would have to meet total parking requirements for each use together, they would not comply.
But if there were a situation in which, for example, they bust in people for something, or people didn't have to park, let's say they walked or took bikes, then that, I guess the parking minimum is required regardless of how, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if they, for example, when we do arts, beats and eats, where we close streets and we have less parking, but we bus people in, well, you can have more people in the same space, but I guess that's not really an issue for the school because their schedule doesn't have that kind of conflict. Okay.
Mr. Hedges, could you talk about the lighting again? There's currently lighting at the football field, or do they play their games during the day, or?
The photographs we have of the existing field, that the football field does not have exterior lighting. Perhaps the petitioner could clarify, but the photographs we recorded from Google Street View did not show any exterior light fixtures
Okay,
for the football field.
that's what I was wondering. So there would be new lighting installed
Yes, there would.
for the football field? And has there been a study done, or what? I'm not a lighting expert, so I guess my concern is the relationship to the homes that are on the north end?
They did supply a photometric grid, which is included with the site plan materials. That does show that the light levels do decrease as it goes beyond the football field. They did not show what the exact light levels would be at the property line, but they have stated in writing to the department that they will have the levels reduced to the point so that it does comply when levels hit that north property line, and that the illumination would not spill over into the right-of-way. But again, that's something the petitioner may be able to address a bit better.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Hedges? Is the petitioner here?
Monsignor Robert McClory, it's a delight to be here today. I'm the pastor of the Shrine of Little Flower Parish and also the president of our schools. We've had a high school in this vicinity since 1941. By way of information, in the 6 counties that comprise the Archdiocese of Detroit, there are actually only 4 parishes remaining that offer a K through 12 program. We actually have a pre-K through 12 program. It enhances a remarkable stability within the community, and it's a place of attracting many families who come to value our schools and our parish family. This is really enhancing what's already existent there. The city benefits from a stable, well-maintained and top-rate high school and academy, which we have at the Shrine of the Little Flower. The project has been done with the neighborhood in mind. It provides an aesthetic enhancement to what is currently there. Regarding the general vicinity, we have reached out to the neighbors. We have engaged them in conversations to make sure that we're addressing their needs. So we believe this will be certainly an enhancement, and it's really just upgrading what we currently have. We do have some other individuals here. I'd like to introduce Mark McPartland, who can address some of the aspects. We also have some civil engineers here who could go into some more of the technical aspects that might be of interest to you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mark McPartland, TMP Architecture, with the architecture for this project, architects for the project. And I will address the lighting that was brought up. Currently, they do have lighting on the fields. It's temporary lighting. Probably didn't show up on Google or anything, but there's 4 temporary lighting units that they put in place. I think they're always in place there. The issue with those lights is that they're a lot lower. I think they're probably 15, 20 foot high at the most. So we'll actually improve the situation by putting in these 70-foot poles, because the light will be directed more down on the field instead of kind of shining out as they do now. So that was one of the things we wanted to address that we heard from the neighbors. As far as the light level at the property line, I think the requirement from the city is to have that at 0 at the property line, which we will conform with, except for the pole that's in the, that Mr. Hedges mentioned would be in the right-of-way. The reason that that pole is in the right-of-way is we're not able to move the football field south any further because of the geometry of the site and some of the access we would need behind the bleachers, the new bleachers. So when we moved it south as much as we could, and it still requires an encroachment. And so, but beyond that light pole, which would typically be at the property line, it would be 0. It would still maintain that relationship of lower lighting as it gets away from the light pole. If that makes sense. Some of the other things we tried to address that I can speak on is the sound. There were some mentions of sound, of noise from some of the residents. So we will have more directional focused speakers that'll point directly down to the stands, which will be just on the south side of the field. There won't be any stands on the north side, so there won't be any need to get sound over there. So the sound should improve also because it'll be the newer technology and it'll be more directed on the bleachers. And then a couple of the other things that we took into consideration as far as being good neighbors was we really tried to dress up the Yorba Linda streetscape, I guess, on the Shrine side of the street, and we are adding quite a bit of landscaping, as well as a kind of a decorative fence that we're trying to get like a collegiate feel to it with maybe some, with a decorative metal fence, perhaps some brick piers or something like that to dress up that Yorba Linda and to screen some of the activities going on in the field. And then probably one of the last things we took into account, this is per the planning department recommendations, we moved the ball diamonds from, they were originally located, and these are just practice fields only. They're within the practice football field. We moved those to the south side of the site also. They were formerly on the north side to get that activity away from the residents. So, any questions that I could answer?
Mr. Golder?
As to the lighting, how many light poles are there?
There'll be 4 light poles, and they'll incorporate the LED light, the latest LED lighting, the best technology.
How many fixtures per pole? Is there like, do you know how
I
many
think
lights?
there was like six or 8, I believe.
And roughly, I don't see where they're actually placed on a drawing. Are they like at the 20-yard line?
Yeah, I think the 25-yard line
Okay. On 4.
on 4 sides, right, or 4 spots, 2 on each side of the field.
Thank you.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes, that may be a question for the Monsignor. At what time of day do you play football games?
I'll ask our athletic director. Currently, they're on Saturdays. The temporary lighting that was referred to is only episodically. That's a couple times a year. But if it's a Saturday game, it's at 1 o'clock. If it's a Friday game, it's at 7 o'clock. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how often do you play on Friday versus Saturday?
Currently, we're limited in our ability to play on Fridays due to the lighting situation. So I think this year we were able to have how many night games? 4 night games. So with temporary lighting, it's not there permanently, but just those specialized events.
So, but with the lighting, you would look to conduct more of your games on Friday nights?
Well, currently, I think if it's a 9-game schedule, typically you'd have how many games at home? It's our athletic director, Mr. Ben Kerfoot, who would be a little bit more expert at that.
Yeah, with the football games, that we would most likely host them on Friday nights because we also have our CYO program, which is our usually like 2nd grade through 8th grade. They do a lot of things on Saturdays, so they would most likely have their games and things on Saturdays, where the high school would be on Friday nights. And so, yeah, with a nine game schedule, we're looking at usually between 4 or 5 home games, depending on how we do in the playoffs. So.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can he come, I'm sorry, your name? Yeah.
Ben.
We may have some more questions, so, Mr. Godek.
I'm sorry. On that same line of question, when does a Friday night game start and roughly conclude?
Usually football games are about 2.5 hours, and they start at 7 o'clock. So they usually are wrapped up by about 9:30.
Thank you.
Other than football, what do you anticipate this field being used for in the evening where the lights would have to go on?
So we do have.
In terms of the entire calendar year?
Yeah, so we do, in the fall, we would have boys soccer and boys football that would be using it for night games. And then in the spring, we have girls soccer and boys lacrosse that would also use it in the spring. Technically, they usually have, I would say, between 5 to 7 home games apiece.
So 14, 28 plus 4, so you're looking at 32 to 35 nights a year that this could be illuminated.
Right.
Okay. Ms.
I
Douglas?
didn't think past football. So at what time of day are the soccer and lacrosse games?
Right now they're all at 5:30 because we don't have lights there. So whenever we're doing them now, the games are always at 5:30 for all of our sports.
But what will they be after you have lighting?
If we have lighting, then we would have some of those games at 7, and some games would be at 5:30.
So, and I'll tell you what I'm driving at here. We heard from a citizen in the area who talked about heavy, people from neighboring businesses parking on Yorba Linda, traffic on Yorba Linda. And what I'm looking to find out is how much traffic we're going to get there when, for example, neighboring businesses are open. And actually, I'm reassured by the fact that most of your games with the lighting will shift to later in the evening when, theoretically, the imaging clinic or the medical clinic on the corner doesn't have employees parking there. So this actually, to me, does ease maybe some of the traffic and parking problems.
Yes. Yep.
That's what I'm driving at. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Beaky?
I have a couple questions regarding the materials as relate to using the artificial turf. I've done a lot of reading about some of the concerns about toxicity to people, to runoff, that sort of thing. And so that's one question. And then also with regard to our Royal Oaks interest in decreasing our stormwater runoff and such, so you're adding parking and some of the changes of surface areas, how you anticipate having that handled, and I do think I saw some kind of basin in here, but in terms of runoff, because now I understand it's grass, natural grass, and it's switching over to a synthetic material, and so again, if there's been any concerns about the toxicity both to people playing on that as well as what the runoff might be.
Yeah, so as far as the new synthetic turfs, they've come a long way in the past 20 years, and I think there aren't the same concerns with the new materials that in the past. So I've been assured, at least from our suppliers, that the new fields are non-toxic, so that shouldn't be an issue. As far as the drain, one of the reasons, the big reasons that Shrine is petitioning to have this site plan accepted like it is because that field drains so poorly out there, and it's just a quagmire, and it really hinders a lot of their athletic contests. So the synthetic turf will help that, and then the drainage will have pipes installed under the field to detain that water, and I probably should have our civil engineer speak on that a little more. He's here also, but there is a requirement for to detain the water before it's released into the sewer system. So we will be installing pipes under the field and likely the parking lot to accomplish that.
Yeah, just to, my name is Jake Ensley. I'm a Spalding Dedecker. We're the civil engineer on the project. Just to speak a little bit more on the stormwater management, we do understand that we are increasing imperviousness of the site quite a bit with the additional hard surface pavement, as well as the free draining field that's going to be collected with that under drain underneath the field and collected into the storm system. So on the plan currently, we do show actually multiple areas of underground detention with rows of storm pipe that's going to essentially detain that water before it's released out into the city system. Of course, we'll work with the engineering department on meeting their requirements and, in terms of the release rate and the size of the detention and everything. But that is in consideration. We do plan on providing the necessary detention volume and things of that matter for the drainage.
Ms. Beaky?
Just follow up, is any of the site plan, is any of the organic planting, the materials meant to also be part of the retention of the water, or is it strictly in those basins?
No, it would strictly be within the basins. I believe the landscape architect is essentially just planning for
Aesthetics.
straightly, aesthetic plantings.
Any other questions? Okay, if you could have a seat and open up the public hearing? Is there anyone in the audience who would, yes, right here. I just need your name, please, sir.
Sure. My name is Joe Chase, and I am a resident on Yorba Linda, across the street from the gymnasium. And I'm here with my wife and my next-door neighbors, Dan and Millie Williams. And we are in support of this plan, except for one item, which is the traffic. The exit out of the backside onto Yorba Linda, this never used to exist. That gate was locked for all the years that I sent my kids to school, and I believe it's probably only been open maybe 3 years, but it's been the last year or so that parents and students have been encouraged to exit out the back way onto Yorba Linda. This exit is by nature a maintenance entrance and exit. It was never designed to be a main exit. And what we're seeing in front of our houses is a complete traffic jam. And now this is not during athletic events. I'm speaking when school lets out, when parents are picking up their kids, and when students are exiting out the backside onto Yorba Linda. I've seen backups up to 35 cars on Yorba Linda waiting to turn right onto Woodward. The Urology Center, which is not on the site plan, is 150 feet from this Shrine exit. Okay, and that is a very busy place, the Urology Center. Add to that, the Avenue Diner, the staff of the Avenue Diner parks all up and down Yorba Linda, and they take up all that public parking all the way up to and including my house and in front of the school. So it is a very congested mess when parents are stopping on Yorba Linda to pick up their kids. There's inadequate parking because of the other businesses that are there. Now, I see right in front of me a great solution, and I did propose it at the Shrine meeting, the meeting that Shrine had for the neighbors. If the supplemental parking lot exited straight out rather than turning east before it exited, it would double the distance from the Shrine exit to the Urology Center exit, okay? And although it's still close to where we're at, and it would be, you know, there's a lot of movement there, there wouldn't be competing traffic, even if it were just 150 feet to the west, which is about what it would be as I look at this site plan. It would be a simple change. It wouldn't affect the fields or the concession stand or anything else that I see. But right now, it's not just a, you know, congestion, it's a dangerous mess because the parking is all taken up. So parents are literally stopping in the active traffic lane to pick up their kids. And it's dangerous. And something bad is going to happen. And myself and my next door neighbors, we're right there where the Shrine exit is. And we see this every day. Some days it's better than others, but often there is a 35-car backup on Yorba Linda of students and parents just waiting to turn onto Woodward. And they're coming all the way up into the residential area because they're being encouraged to use the back exit of Shrine, which, like I say, that was always closed. It was never a vehicle entrance or exit. My daughter graduated in 2015, and she never was able to pass through that gate, but now the gate is wide open, and students are being encouraged to use that as the main exit.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. I should note that each speaker under public comment has 3 minutes. So keep that in mind. Next, anyone else? Yes, sir, on the aisle. Your name, please?
My name is Albert Nesbitt. I live at 3616 Yorba Linda Boulevard in Royal Oak. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Fernier, Madam Chairperson, Commission members. Currently, my home is directly across the street from the Shrine High School scoreboard. Under the proposed site plan, my home will be on the 40-yard line. Last month, my wife and I attended the informational meeting held at Shrine High School introducing this proposal. At that time, we expressed some concerns to the school administration and the architectural firm planning the project. Since that time, I have reviewed the materials for this meeting and have added a couple of new concerns to that. I wish to share those concerns with the commission tonight, a total of 4, and in no particular order. First of all, the sound system. As we expressed in the meeting at Shrine, the current configuration of the speaker system points directly at the neighborhood. It seems to have gotten better recently in the past year or so. We have had problems the past number of years hearing rap music in our home with all the doors and windows closed. In prep for games, during practice sessions, I suggested that the speaker systems be placed facing the crowd so that we don't get that noise coming into our homes. And possibly with the newer technology that may work. The second concern that I have is the lighting plan. The plan calls for a maximum height of 70 feet. That's 30% higher, or 30 feet higher than the current zoning requirements on, was it 770-96, paragraph 3E, B3E. The illumination summary only shows the foot candles and target points on the playing field that they showed in the site plan. I would think that with this kind of engineering, they could also show us the number of foot candles on Yorba Linda. With that type of analysis, they should be able to provide that for us. The Planning Division has recommended that the requirements of 770-96B3 as it relates to 0.1 candles be maintained.
Sir, you have 15 seconds.
Pardon me?
You have 15 seconds.
My third concern is the water runoff of the situation. I don't believe that the city engineer has taken a good look at that because Yorba Linda floods right there by the urology center every time we get a really big rain. So I don't think the sewer system is capable of handling the runoff from this thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Could I give some of my time for Mr. Nesbitt to finish his comments, please?
Well, why don't you go ahead? You're up here. Your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Diane Weckerly. I came to the last meeting, which was at the school, and I appreciate that the architectural firm has taken some of our concerns into consideration. I'm concerned in general about the noise and the light pollution. Already, everybody for blocks around says that they can hear everything that's going on. And that's, anyway, from the whistles to the announcements to the music, and it's a problem. The other thing I'm concerned about is the light pollution. And you've talked about that it'll be directed better down into the stands. But what I'd like to suggest is, and I know that there was some talk about more landscaping and a fence. I'm not clear about the specifics on what that would be, but I know in the last plan, they had like these 70-foot trees all around, you know, that thing that was just discussed on William Street. So anyway, I would just like to see as many trees and bushes as possible along the street to absorb the light and the noise pollution. And I think that would help to protect the neighborhood and make it, you know, continue to keep it quiet and like a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there time left for Mr. Nesbitt
We'll
to
take the
continue?
next, anyone else? Yes, sir, right there. I just need your name.
Carl Peters. I live on Kensington, which is just around the corner from Yorba Linda. And at athletic events now, people are parking all along Yorba Linda and on Kensington up to Rockingham, which is the next street over from Yorba Linda. And people are walking back and forth through the neighborhood, and it does create quite a crowded situation. Now, I'm concerned that there is not enough parking space at the school. They say they have 202 spaces, but their stadium is planned to hold 1,000 people, and I don't know if those 202 spaces will be enough. Like right now, obviously, it's not enough because they have people parking all over the neighborhood.
Thank you. Yes, right here.
My name is Millicent Williams. I live right across the street from where the exit is on Yorba Linda. And as my neighbor said, it's really very congested. I come home at 3 o'clock. When I come home, it's 4 deep. The cars are 4 deep. They're parked on this side, by the school, by the gymnasium. They're coming out and going around them. People are coming in, and people are on this side of the street. It's just way too much. There are older people going to the urology clinic. They're walking across the street. The employees from the urology clinic are walking across the street, coming off the Yorba Linda, coming off of Woodward. You have to get off of that street. You can't have all that blockage, and there's other cars coming in. So it is really, really, really a mess. When we have the Dream Cruise, they don't even allow people to park on that side of the street because of all the congestion and how close it is to Woodward. And this is just gonna, I mean, it's really a mess. It needs to be. I wondered if they could show us what he's proposing and why that isn't gonna work. Is that something that they're gonna address maybe tonight? What he is proposing and why it might not work?
We could take a look at the parking plan again. You said you came home at 3 p.m.?
Yes, I come
3
home.
p.m.,
Yes,
okay.
when school is getting out for the children, I'm coming in.
You're coming home, okay.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, that's.
Okay, thank you. Sure, right here.
Hello, my name is Nathan Knapp. I'm a Shrine parishioner, and I have children who go to Shrine as well. So I'm concerned about safety and whatnot. I know one of the reasons why we want the Yorba Linda access is turning left out of the parking lot on the 13 mile is very dangerous as well, especially for student drivers with the hospital right there. I know that was a point of concern that the school wanted is access on the 13 mile, especially turning left. It's very, for experienced drivers, it's a it can be a challenge. So for high school drivers, it can be an extreme challenge, especially turning left, especially after school events and just normal events, I should say. And I am concerned about safety as well, but I think this field project's not really going to change the fact, add to our issues or anything like that. So I know the school always addresses drop-off, pick-up, beginning of the year, Do they need to do a better job of informing the parents? Maybe, but I think just wanted to address the Yorba Linda issue of why access onto that road is kind of encouraged now for people pulling out on a 13 mile, because hopefully everyone kind of knows that area right there. There's, especially with Woodward Gardens across the street, more traffic and all that sort of stuff. So I think it is encouraged to use Yorba Linda to go right onto Woodward instead of going out onto 13 mile. That is one of our concerns as a parent. Thanks.
Thank you. In the back?
Hi, I'm Susan Tucker. I'm a resident at 3604 Yorba Linda. My concerns are as well the congestion and the traffic. As it is now, that exit out of Shrine onto Yorba Linda used to be gated. Now it's been opening, and at 3 o'clock, it's a madhouse. Both sides are parking from Avenue employees, not just the Beaumont Clinic. Avenue is open till 9 or 10 at night, all day. So you have both of those. I have been coming into the neighborhood from Woodward, turned right, and there's a huge line at 3 o'clock from the parents picking up kids, and they're getting impatient. So they're coming out of the line and going left illegally as you're coming into the neighborhood, and you meet head to head. I've met head to head, and you can't go anywhere because you've got all the parking on both sides of the street. And this is at 3 o'clock, and then what they do is, because they're impatient, the Avenue has a back alley into their parking lot. They're coming into the opposite way, trying to cut ahead of the line and go into the Avenue parking and go out to Woodward that way. So right now, even without 20 more spots, 22 more spots entering onto Yorba Linda, there's issues now. And the line gets backed up because they're trying to go across Woodward 4 lanes so they can get at the end of the neighborhood, get all the way across the 4 lanes, and it takes a long time because it's traffic ridden then. So the line is hugely backed up. All the school events, the whole Yorba Linda, it's not just sporting events, it's all school events. They park now because that back entrance used to be gated and locked, but now it's open all the time. So they have found ways, and I don't know what the laws were about using that as an entrance and exit at that point on Yorba Linda. I just know it has changed, and it is a huge safety concern. And I agree with the lighting and the noise pollution as well. But I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Good evening. My name is Linda Nesbitt, 3616 Yorba Linda Boulevard, and I just wanted to make a point about the position of the scoreboard. It looks like the view from our front window will be looking at the back side of the scoreboard, and we wondered if they could just keep it at an angle like it is now, or at the end of the shot put area, or on top of the new concession building. And it would just be an easier way to look at from the neighbor's point of view. And I agree, the parking is horrible at 3 o'clock. Horrible. You're coming in from Woodward, and you could just run right into someone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, now seeing that, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to this side of the table. We're missing our planning person, so maybe we should pause. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay.
I wanted to
Ms.
follow up
Douglas.
on the foot candles question, the lighting question, because I thought I heard the engineer address that in terms of what the spillover onto Yorba Linda would be, and yet citizens wondered about that. So could
Please. Yeah, could we?
Can we talk foot candles here and pattern?
Sure, to the best of my ability, I can. So I think the requirement in the city, in the ordinance, I think is, and Mr. Hedges can correct me if I'm right, I think 0-foot candles at the lot line. And we,
0.1.
0.1, okay. As he mentioned, we did state in writing that we will maintain that, so there won't be any spillover into the neighborhood. And at this point, our engineering study only focused on the field. That's the only thing we were able to get. But we will expand that once we have, once we know what system we're putting in there.
And the technology exists, I mean, in terms of lighting, to be able to direct it. I mean, you only want it on the field.
We only want it on the field,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And as I mentioned, it'll be higher than the lights now, so it'll actually improve the light that is dissipated to the neighborhood.
Okay, good, thank you. And I have another question.
Please.
And this may be for the athletic director, I guess. And it's just a quick question. Is the number of sporting events, after-school sporting events, gross number annually going to change?
No. No, I mean, we'd have the capabilities to host more things doing it this way. I mean, we're not adding any more teams or anything like that, so yeah, we might be adding a few games just because people would want to play on our field, where right now people don't want to play on our field very often.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Mr. Godek?
I'm not sure who to direct this to, but a number of the comments were about traffic and parking, traffic flow in and out of current site and proposed site. I guess I'll start with Mr. Hedges. On 13 Mile, there is a signal just to the west of the parking lot. I believe it helps 2 lanes of in and out from Beaumont. Is that correct? There's a
There is, yeah, a signalized intersection for Beaumont. In fact, maybe 2 that are west of the Shrine site.
And I want to say there's a signal, I don't know if it's pedestrian activated, like right in front of the horseshoe in front of the school. That's correct. I guess what I'm getting at is 13 Mile a county road, or is that?
I believe it is maintained by the county, but I don't know for certain. I'd have to check with engineering.
What I was getting at is there's 2 signals right there, and you got 2 parking lots, and they're encouraged to use Yorba Linda. I'd like to see it the other way around, and if that could be helped with some signaling. We got existing signals there, and the gentleman that spoke, that's a parishioner, said that making a left out of that parking lot onto 13 Mile is dangerous. If that signal in front of Beaumont was stopping traffic from going further east, the only traffic that you'd have to deal with is right turn on reds coming out of Beaumont, which could be handled with a don't turn right on red signage or something like that. And I just think we could improve the traffic situation here, and that deserves some attention. That's all I got.
We can forward that to engineering, because they would have to handle the review of something like that through their traffic committee.
I guess also to add on to that too is that one of the gentlemen that spoke saying it could get some improvement on having a straight shot driveway rather than one that's offset. I don't know if the petitioner considered that suggestion. I'd like to hear from the architect on that, I guess.
Yes, we did consider that. Actually, one of the issues was it's an existing curb cut now, so we thought it would be best to leave it there as far as any further interaction with the city and traffic studies and things. So we didn't want to introduce a new curb cut. The other reason was we were concerned about traffic, since it is right now it's kind of more of a, it's not a direct shot out the parking lot, so there'd be a lot more backup on the site, and we were concerned that that would force more people to make that left turn onto 13 Mile. So we did consider it.
I guess both your reasons are things that I'd like to see happen. If there was a traffic backup, it'd be preferred to be on site rather than on Yorba Linda. And you're gonna cut the curb anyway to widen it, so I guess a straight shot driveway would be one of my recommendations. And to have city engineering look at working with Beaumont on that signal with some relief for people making left turns so that that huge parking lot on 13 Mile could exit on 13 Mile. Thank you.
I have a question for Monsignor. You heard some concerns about the gate being open in the back. Is that something new that the school has decided to do?
My understanding is over the last 2 years, it's been open more regularly.
Okay.
I don't know that I would say it's encouraged. I think it's chosen. I think that the congestion that exists there is candidly not the fault of Shrine High School or Academy. I think that that area has intensified. I mean, we're not the Urology Center, we're not the Avenue Diner, we're not the Beaumont Corner,
Sure.
and we're not the Beaumont Expanding Project. So I think that area has certainly intensified, and so it has become a safety issue for our students. And so I think nature finds a way to be able to accommodate that. So I think it's really been for about the last 2 years, is my understanding.
Is
that it's been
it
more
open during
regularly
sporting
used.
events too? Is there an egress and an ingress because of?
I mean, it's too narrow right now, so during the sporting events, it's not actively used. I mean, there might be a bus that comes out.
We usually have it open because a lot of times we'll, like for football games, we'll put another gate there. So like usually during football, we don't have them going by there because we don't want the traffic going back that way
Right.
during the game. But usually we have it open after the game. Or
So after the game, people can exit through that gate?
Yes.
Is it pedestrian and vehicle traffic?
Yes.
Both? Okay.
Yep. They usually don't go back there after games. Yeah, usually when people are using this is around 3 o'clock is when school's getting out. That's when more people are using it. They don't use it as much because we have our locker rooms there and people tend not to go through that way during the games.
Is it locked at some point every day?
Usually not locked. It's just we would just close it, like dummy lock it.
Okay.
During the games.
Right now, it's allowed in.
Excuse us. We're having a planning commission meeting right now. I'm addressing the petitioner, not the audience. Thank you. So, okay, so you don't open it for the football games in particular. It's mostly the school traffic.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have a gate there and then we have a gate by the school. And a lot of times after 3:30, we'd close the one by the school to prevent people going there because we'd have other practices on the driveway, whether it's cross-country or track or one of our other teams that are practicing there.
Okay.
So we don't always close that one, but we may close the one by the school, which also will stop people from going that way.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Not seeing any. Is there a motion? Ms. Douglas?
Just to be clear, I think the issues that we're dealing with here have to do with the site plan, not the special land use. So I'm gonna move approval of the special land use, expecting a much more detailed discussion as part of the site plan approval.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Is there support?
Support.
Support, Mr. Godek, I heard? Okay. All right, there's been a motion by Ms. Douglas, support by Mr. Godek for the special land use. Is there any discussion on this? Not seeing, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The special land use moves forward. Mr. Hedges, site plan?
Yes, you have our site plan memo with a list of proposed contingencies, should you consider approval of it. You can, of course, add or subtract to those if there are other issues regarding lighting or traffic that you feel fit. The first contingency is the approval of the license agreements for all encroachments into the Yorba Linda Boulevard right-of-way. The second is that the soccer and football field not be used for events with spectators while classrooms are occupied, or at the same time the gym is used for events with spectators. Landscaping and screening would be provided as shown on the applicable plan sheets unless there are additions recommended by the commission. Again, lighting would be as depicted on the plan sheets, provided the fixtures of a height of no more than 70 feet and illumination levels do not exceed 0.1 foot candles along the Yorba Linda right-of-way line. And the remaining contingencies for paving, signage, performance bond, and other code requirements are typical boilerplate contingencies for all site plans.
Mr. Godek.
I like the improvements that are coming forth here. In general, I think they're all good. I do have concern with the traffic flow out of these parking lots. With an exit onto 13 Mile, there's got to be a better way. And I think that there's a signal right there that would help left turn traffic, and that needs to be utilized in a plan. Even if it happens, if that signal can be smart enough to somehow tie into the driveway heading out of the parking lot, and a straight shot driveway out of the other parking lot, because you don't want stack up on Yorba Linda and cars going in and out of an existing urology parking lot to get to Woodward faster. I hear these same concerns multiple times at the traffic committee for several years, and with what's available on a 13 Mile Road exit, it just, to hear that it's encouraged the other way is something that we should try to correct in some sort of suggestion with this plan. The rest of it, I'm good with. I think it's great. It's an improvement. It's I don't have any other issues.
Any other questions for Mr. Hedges or the petitioners on this?
So I want to talk about go back to this idea of the Mr. Godek brought it up, the idea of a straight shot north from the new parking lot as opposed to the curve that it makes. The advantage of making it go straight onto Yorba Linda is that it adds space between the school's exit and the urology exit. The disadvantage is that it takes away stacking space. That is, with the little curve there it is, you've got the potential to stack more cars waiting to get out. So to me, that's sort of a tie. But I would entertain views to the contrary. It seems to me that the problems that neighbors report with the exit onto Yorba Linda don't have anything to do with the stadium, except perhaps the location of this driveway. That is, the problems that we're seeing are happening, as we heard over and over again, when school lets out and because of business people parking on that street. And it would be great if we had somebody from the traffic committee on this body who could perhaps address that. Oh, we do. And I did encourage one of the citizens who wrote to us to take this issue to the traffic committee, because that's exactly what they're there to do, and to because the city engineer staffs the traffic committee to bring up the idea of changes on 13 Mile, which I think is a great idea. I wanted to add that when streets flood in Royal Oak, it's because it's deliberate. The city uses restrictors on its drains to keep all of that water from going into the storm sewers at once and overloading the system. So we store our water on the street and inconvenience people perhaps for an hour or so in order to manage that storm water. And it does seem to me that the proposal here is going to reduce drainage, existing drainage issues with better retention on site. So I think that, net is gonna be a benefit to the community. It's to the school's interest and benefit to have its speaker system facing the grandstand. And so, I think you will see, people will see a net decrease or improvement in the sound, at least based on, what we've heard today. And so for those reasons, I am going to move approval of the site plan as presented, and if somebody wants to make a case for changing that driveway, I'd, be happy to, if my motion fails, see another motion to that effect.
Motion by Ms. Douglas to approve the site plan as submitted. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Support by the mayor. Any discussion? Mr. Godek.
I appreciate, Shar, your comments. And I don't think we'll see a dramatic shift in how traffic is handled on this site unless the school encourages to use the 13-mile road, the Yorba Linda exit. It could have one effect one way or the other in the suggestion to have this in front of the traffic committee is appreciated, but I think if situations can be handled here with suggestions to the city engineer, it might have a better chance of flying, and letting Matt handle this administratively with suggestions from you all and the city commissioners. Traffic committee meets every other month, and to be quite honest, I think we could make a good decision right here with suggesting that the 13-mile entrance and exit get utilized. Because we've heard that it's dangerous for the kids to drive out, make a left turn. Fix that and you kind of fix the problem here because it's a big parking lot. So I'll probably vote in favor of your motion, but I don't know if we can amend it to have the city engineer work with Doug on this plan to see if we can tie in a signal to make it safe to use 13 Mile as a egress from the site, if you'd consider that as an amendment to your motion.
Well, I don't think we can make that part of a site plan. It's because it's not under the applicant's control. But we could, make a separate motion to that effect, refer this up to the city commission or to the engineering staff. I'd be happy to do that if you didn't.
Yeah, for the site plan, yeah, any changes to the signalization of 13 Mile, it's not something we could make contingent on this site plan approval. Reconfiguring or moving the driveway to Yorba Linda, yes, that could be subject to any further conditions the commission would like to place, but.
I guess I'm not looking at, I'm sorry to interrupt, but make it a contingency to the plan. Matt and your department are gonna know best what you're gonna be able to do. So I just didn't wanna see this go in front of another committee. And it's under requirements, a suggestion to see if signalization can be optimized.
Yeah, I can forward that along to engineering, that's no problem, but it wouldn't be something we could make a contingency.
Right. We don't even know if we can change the signal. I mean, if it's it would probably require some discussions with Beaumont, the county, and who knows else. So I'd like those discussions to happen with your staff and with Matt Callahan rather than another committee.
Yeah.
Ms. Beakey.
Related to that, listening to some of the issues on Yorba Linda with the different businesses in the area and such, I don't know if, I live on one of the streets in Royal Oak that's restricted to residents only during certain hours, and maybe there's some modifications on those side streets that might relate to also relieving some of those congestion issues that you all mentioned that might relate to that kind of thing that either could be explored with this, or maybe you all could take that to the traffic committee as a suggestion on your own. And the only other thing I would say is, I like the plan overall. With regard to the stormwater and with the landscaping, if there's anything further that could be done to take into consideration, not just the aesthetics, but something to do with that mitigation of the stormwater would be appreciated. I won't I'd like to say that as a recommendation, not necessarily something to restrict what's being said here. I mean, being put forward.
Thanks, Ms. Beaky. Mayor?
Yeah, I think when I look at this, and I'm appreciative of everyone coming out tonight and helping us understand the situation a little bit better as far as the traffic. Those are things that we can't always see on a diagram or understand, you know, especially if it's happening at 3 p.m. or what that really looks like. I think for me, you know, I agree. I think some of the things with the lighting will actually get better and improve. I think with the sound, it'll get better and improve. So I think those things can be managed. And I think every time we've had a situation like this, not just with athletic fields, but with restaurants and things like that, it usually works itself out where, you know, the lighting studies and the sound studies are pretty good. And, you know, if they need to be tweaked, you know, they can be tweaked. And if they're not, you know, compliant with the ordinances, then, you know, the lights come down or the speakers come down. I mean, it's that simple. I think if we do nothing at all, we don't approve this or whatever, I'm not sure that really at all addresses the traffic flow situation that seems to have appeared in the last couple of years. I think by adding 30 some odd parking spots, I think for at least athletic activities, there might even be a little bit of relief with this because there'll be more parking and, you know, there won't be as much issue with people parking on Yorba Linda or up on Kensington. I do think that to solve the congestion issue, I think it's got to be piecemealed a little bit. I like some of the ideas Mr. Godek has brought up. I do also think going to the traffic committee and getting some, you know, if people are parking on your street. We saw this unexpectedly with the Cruise and Mirror restaurant that opened up. And we had people parking, employees and everybody parking way down, and they went with resident parking only, and it addressed some of the concerns that they had. And so I think if you have people from a restaurant or urologist or whatever parking on the street, we can, you know, certainly take it to the traffic committee and, you know, maybe there's no parking on the street, maybe there's no parking between these times on the street. There's a lot of different things that can work, and I trust that, you know, we have a great experience curve to kind of help with some of those situations. I agree with Commissioner Douglas. I don't know if doing the straight shot out helps or not, because you kind of lose that queuing, you know, for people there. But I do think that there can be some alleviation on this, and I'm hopeful that, you know, Shrine will work cooperatively with our city engineer and with our traffic committee to tweak it, and also, you know, you have the commitment from the city here to work on a safer situation off 13 Mile. I think the biggest challenge you have is some traffic studies are probably coming because of the redevelopment that Beaumont has done at Woodward Corners. So we can't predict. You're not going to spend $500,000 or $1 million on new lights unless you actually know how the traffic patterns are, right? So now that we see some of that congestion coming up there in that area with the new business, which is good. It brings some life back into that corner. It's good for people living in that area to have new places to go to. But I think that could necessitate some changes to the lighting and make it easier and safer for everybody in the area. But, you know, we suffer and we struggle through this at Royal Oak Middle School too, with parent pickup and drop off. I can tell you I dropped my kids off at the middle school and Keller Elementary, and the congestion just doesn't bother the neighbors. It bothers me when I'm 20 minutes late for work.
So it's you?
It's me. Sometimes we ride our bikes when the weather's nice, but so I think, I don't know, I mean, if this site plan really approving it or not approving it, I think there's still this other problem that really is sort of ancillary that we have to resolve, and I'm grateful that everyone came out here tonight because I do think there's a way forward. I just don't know how much we can tie it to a site plan that actually is probably going to solve some issues. It's going to solve the sound issues. It's going to solve the drainage issues. I can tell you that right now with the detention, that's going to really help. We've been doing a lot of work on stormwater. We're going to get some more parking there, which is going to help with the events. But we still have this lingering traffic issue regardless. So some of the issues I think will get better, but this one doesn't change. We have to figure out how to make it better. And at least my experience with Shrine is, you know, they've always been very cooperative in solving some of these issues. But you have the cooperation of the city to help with this as well. And so I'm very grateful you brought it to our attention.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Okay, there's a motion on the floor. It has support. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Site plan passes.
Okay, Mr. Hedges, you noted, we're gonna get started on that with engineering?
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding the signalization on 13 Mile and also the parking and access to Yorba Linda Boulevard.
Right.
Did we have to include in this so the city commission can consider the licensing for the?
That was one of the contingencies.
Okay,
in
and
there.
that
So,
was in
yeah,
the motion, okay.
It's the first one, yes.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
I'm assuming that it was
Done.
all contingencies.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for Monsignor. We passed our motion, but I'm just curious, you've been in, here since 41. How many improvements have you made to this athletic field?
Well, the field itself was put in, I think, in 1964, 63, 64. And then, we've continued to enhance from there. I think, as I mentioned, in, would it have been '07, that the field house itself went in. Certainly, we had a season where our enrollment was significantly larger than it is right now on that campus. It's really encouraging to hear the 13-mile challenge. It's really a challenge for us. I mean, so I'm grateful if we can make some improvements there. So I don't have the full history, but the field itself goes back to 1963, 64.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Good luck this Friday, I guess. You guys are- Saturday?
Yeah, thank you.
Go Knights.
They're in the playoffs, I guess.
Okay, next up is under new business. This is item 2. This is a site plan, SP 191122, to modify off-street parking lots and install stormwater detention pond for cable television service Comcast at 4500 Delemere. Mr. Hedges.
Yeah, this is just a site plan review. There's no special land use permit involved. What the petitioner is doing is actually removing some of their off-street parking and reconfiguring remaining parking. And they are adding a stormwater detention pond to their site. We included a drawing from an earlier plan that shows the existing site as it is now. Because for some reason on our digital copies, it doesn't show up well on the plans, but most of the parking being reconfigured is that's along Delemere Blvd, and then one toward the southeast corner of the site. If I can get back to the other plans to show where the stormwater detention facility would be put in this corner, where there is now an off-street parking lot. Off-street parking would be removed and reconfigured along Delemere. Even though they are removing some off-street parking, they will still comply with that is required for Comcast facilities. As far as the contingencies go, we have recommended, of course, the maintain required amount of off-street parking. Even with what's left, they will still be over what is required. That they also include the details for the fencing that is proposed around the stormwater detention, because we did notice those within the plans they submitted. And then, of course, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all boilerplate contingencies for paving, lighting, signage, performance bonds, and other code requirements. Other than that, staff doesn't have anything further. We'd be happy to answer any questions about it.
Mayor?
Mr. Hedges, if I understand correctly, they are taking away off-street parking. So the amount of permeable pavement that they intend to have post-project will be less.
Yes, it will.
Okay, so that reduces the burden on the stormwater management system just by the sheer fact that that goes away. What they've added is a retention pond versus a detention system that doesn't absorb the water, but just holds it above the ground, and yeah, I guess you get some evaporation. There is some absorption in the turf, but it's a little better than a detention system, but still water and peak rainfalls, high rainfalls will still be restricted, but put into the system. But it does improve overall the amount of runoff that's going into the system, if I understand.
It does improve the amount of runoff going to the system. The detention pond will actually restrict flow to where it would slow down the flow of stormwater going in to the system during a heavy event. The petitioner could probably give you better statistical information on that, but that's the purpose of the detention pond, whereas in the previous case, it would be in pipes under the field. In this site plan, it's a surface pond that to collect the water and discharge it more slowly into the system so it is not overwhelmed.
Any other questions? Mr. Godek?
I guess, real quick, just so that the petitioner knows what I'll be asking to is, and I'm sitting where Klooster usually does, so he would probably wonder why we generally don't like to see two driveways where there was one, so we're adding a second driveway onto Delemere, and they're fairly close together. You know, if you look at the complete streets and all the other stuff, you try to minimize your driveways, especially when they're that close to one another.
Actually, if I'm looking at the existing site plan there, I believe the two driveways are existing on Delemere, one toward the far corner and the other in the middle. And then there's still the existing one to Nakota Road. There would be some repaving and reconfiguration of the access points, but I don't believe they are adding a new one.
On your existing site plan that you have on the end of your memo, I'm only seeing one driveway onto Delemere.
Yeah, it doesn't show up.
It's faded out.
Yeah, but it is somewhat faded, but there is a curb cut and a driveway at that northwest corner.
Okay. I'll probably ask that again, but I'm done for now.
Any other questions from Mr. Hedges? Is the petitioner here? Welcome. Do you have anything to add?
My name's Ken Bolso, Spalding Decker, representing Comcast. Apologize for Carl Volza not being able to be here, but he was encouraged to allow this plan to come forward. Yes, and there is 3 access points. They're all 3 existing. We're matching the existing asphalt. Right now, they're asphalt approaches. So we are improving them to the standards that the city has for not only geometrics, but concrete as well as matching all the sidewalks the way the engineering department needs them to be done. So all 3 approaches are being improved, but they are exactly where they're located at as they are today. Let me see. And on the point number 3, the cross-section on the chain link fence, on sheet SB3, detail F, there is a chain link detail as well as calling out as vinyl coated.
Okay.
So they are part of the plans.
What sheet was that again?
The SB3, detail F. And then for the paving rework within the public right-of-way, I kind of touched on that, but general note number 1 on plan sheet SB3 also calls out that it'll meet the standard requirements from the engineering department as well. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Godek?
Are you gonna change any signage?
There is no plans to change any signage. They're gonna be existing as they are today. And let me go back to something that just came, if I may. The detention system that was just here before us was an underground system. That's, the reason is because typically in those kind of environments, you don't have enough room to put an open detention basin. In this case, we have the opportunity because we're taking out the existing parking lot on the east side, which happens to be the low part of the site. We're able to take all the drainage in the underground piping system to that location, and the open detention basin will work just like the underground systems do. The good thing about an open system is you can see it. If there's an issue, you can usually resolve it. The underground systems you can't see. Not saying they're not bad, not good at all, but they are, because I've had a lot of them I've installed as well. So we just chose to have an open basin with a fence that'll be maintained per the city requirements, and it's a great location for that.
Ms. Douglas?
Is it a lined basin, or is there absorption?
There could be absorption. Typically in these areas, you've got clay.
So all the improvements that we've done, it'll come down to that particular spot. By the way, the back side of the site, like you had said before in regards to the city streets, restrict them on the surface and kind of holding the water on this type of surface before it gets down. The back side of the site, in the northeast corner of the site, is designed like that. So that back area floods. The front part of the area that we're actually redeveloping, and the pavement needs to be replaced. That's really what needs to be done. That particular area has no storm sewer. It has leaching basins. So by doing this, we're able to get that down to the pond, restrict it, hold it, and then outlet it at a controlled rate. So we could get some percolation, but most likely it'll be holding it and then releasing it into the system.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Mayor?
How are your parking, what's your real parking situation versus the parking requirements?
At times, I've been out there several different times. The back parking lot is seldom used. It's controlled. They have trucks coming in and out of there for materials as well as training. There's probably, at the most that I've seen up front, is probably 25 or 30 cars. Now, they do have training events when I'm not there, so they could have as many as 40 cars. But the parking lot just to the west, where we've taken and opened that green space up, has been utilized by other businesses across the street. So there's as many as 20 cars over there that have been parking on a Comcast facility. This plan was not to discourage that, but certainly the need is not there, so why replace pavement when you don't need to?
Right, but still, even with this new plan, you're telling me that on a typical average day, you get 30 to 40, parking spots, so that back lot's hardly being used at all.
That's correct. Okay. Just per the ordinance requirements, I need to meet certain thresholds, so we're trying to do that along with keeping the circulation within the parking and around the building. And as you see the little nose that comes down, that's so that way semis can get back up into the truck well that's on the north side of the building.
And what kind of activity do you do out of this building again, if you can remind us?
There's some training events that go on. There's salespeople that come in occasionally, and there's corporate meetings that occur.
So it's not a technical where you have a lot of fiber coming in, or is it?
There's not a lot of material coming in. It's more of a sales facility, more of a training facility for Comcast.
Okay.
And it does have warehousing. I'm sorry that
sure.
They have materials that come in and out of there as well.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one.
Yeah.
And you're just, what, and I know it's in here, I'm just gonna ask you instead of going back, how much of the parking lot's getting resurfaced?
The entire area, with exception to the back northeast part, all of the front part of the building along Dakota and Delemere are all being removed and replaced.
Okay.
Because the pavement is in a failure condition. It's really alligatored and it's falling
But
apart.
the northeast part is fine?
The back part?
Yeah.
It could need some resurfacing, but right now it is drivable, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
A question about plant material.
Yes.
It looks like you've got some trees that are native to this region. You've also got some other plant material that is not as desirable. Would you, is there a willingness to a dwarf burning bush hedge?
Oh, it's not Bradford pears, I'm there.
No. Would you be open or amenable to, along the detention basin, to maybe installing something that is more native to this region?
Yeah, I think there was only one plant, and that's probably the plant you're talking about, is not native to this area. Most of the others along the, obviously we're saving the hedgerow along Delemere, and then along Dakota is all new material to screen the parking lot. I think when it all gets done, it'll look really nice. But yes, to answer your question, if you have suggestions on replacement of those plant materials, I'll be certainly happy to respectfully change those.
Well, because you said it is a clay soil there, and it is a detention retention area, there are species that would do much better than burning bushes there. I would look into the dogwood family.
Okay.
There's a couple of different dogwoods, silky dogwood, red twig dogwood. It looks like it's an area that sometimes those shrubs can, when not maintained properly, can kind of grow a little wild, but where this is
Ridgewood would
located
actually-
wouldn't be a problem.
Ridgewood would actually look really good along the fencing and along the hedgerow too. It
Yeah.
would look really nice. I'll talk to Jim in regards to changing. Jim Epinick is our landscape
Okay.
architect, and I apologize he's not here, because he could have answered that a lot better than I could have. But that
That's okay,
that
well-
is a good suggestion.
Yeah, no, as long as you're amenable to that, I think it'd be better for the site too.
Absolutely.
That's the only one that seemed to be a problem. Any other question, Ms. Beaky?
I was just gonna echo that if you do talk to the landscape architect, and again, because you have this nice open space and you are gonna have that open thinking not just about, the native species of plants benefits the environment in total and birds and such, and so I think that could be really a very attractive area, and you'd find pollinators and birds and such coming by there, which would really add a lot to the site. I like the above-ground retention myself.
Any other questions for the petitioner? If not, is there a motion? Mr. Godek?
To move site plan SP 191122. I think we can eliminate item 3 because that vinyl coated fence is called out into the drawing.
Yeah, it was for a cross-section detail, and also the setback from the easter lot line is, I don't know, I'd have to ask Ken if that is specified on a sheet, and I'm just not seeing it.
Is the setback called off on your drawing, sir?
I'm sorry, what setback were
They give the fence detail again.
It was on SP3.
That's the detail there, where, what sheet, if it's on here, would its setback from the lot line be specified?
It should be on SP2, and I don't know if there's a pure dimension, but we can certainly add it to the plan.
We can leave it in the contingencies until you feel it's gone out
Yeah,
of there.
if we do find it in, because I don't see it on SP2, but then again, I can't zoom in that far.
You guys can handle that later, but
Yeah.
I made the motion.
As long as it's on the sheet for permitting, we're fine.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there support? Support by Ms. Douglas. Any discussion? Mayor?
I'll just add, it's, that back lot kind of bothers me a little bit up there, underutilized. You guys gotta keep the pavement for the parking requirements, but we are, as a planning commission, starting to look at some of those requirements, because I'd love to see that green space. Anytime we can, and it's less to maintain for you guys, so hopefully maybe the next time you come around to pave that portion, think of the creative green infrastructure that you can put in place, because we're very amenable to it. And, for me, this is a plan that reduces stormwater runoff. It certainly doesn't make it worse, so, I think it's a better situation than we had before, so.
Thank you.
Could be better if we could hit that top lot, but,
Any other questions or comments on this motion? Not seeing, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Been approved.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item F1. This is a sign variance 191115 to request to install new freestanding sign with electronic message center for fast food drive-through restaurant McDonald's at 3300 Rochester Road. Mr. Hedges.
Yeah, petitioners are applying for a sign variances to install a new freestanding sign. This would be at the corner of 13 Mile and Rochester Road. Earlier this year, the petitioner did seek variances to maintain a non-conforming freestanding sign at that location. Those requests were, however, denied. They are now proposing to place a new freestanding sign with an electronic message center at this corner. The building division has noted there are 2 items that do not comply with the sign ordinance. The first is the total area of the electronic message center. The maximum's 21 square feet is permitted. The proposed sign would exceed that by 1.33 square feet. The other is the maximum aspect ratio of 16:9 that is allowed. Based on the dimension of the sign, the aspect ratio is approximately 16 to 11.5. So to install the sign as proposed, the petitioner would require variances to those 2 items.
Any questions for Mr. Hedges? I have a question, Mr. Hedges, I'm struggling trying to figure out what the sign looks like. Is it on the ground? So is it 2 foot 8 inches?
Would be
From
the base of
the
it. It's more
base.
of a monument-style sign than
Monument,
a,
okay.
than a freestanding.
Okay, because that's what threw me.
Yeah.
When you said freestanding, I was trying to find a pole,
No,
but
it's,
so it
it's
is
not a
monument
typical
sign.
pole or pylon sign. It is more of a monument-style sign.
Okay. All right. Is the petitioner here?
Good evening. Patrick Stever. So as Mr. Hedges stated, we were before the variance board a few months back, trying to get approval to keep the existing non-conforming sign. We heard the comments from the board at that time. It didn't get approved, but you know, we took the feedback that was given about coming up with a new plan to come back to, you know, get a sign that's gonna be more in line with the code, more up-to-date with the look of McDonald's itself. So that's what we've done here. We've come back with a sign that is smaller than the total allowable square footage. You know, the entire sign area of 38.33 square feet. Keep in mind that that other sign was, you know, over 100 square feet with just the sign itself, not including the digital portion. We've also, you know, complied with the height restriction. The sign's a lot smaller in size. We've actually went to a monument sign. The overall height of 7'1" instead of that 25-foot tall thing that was out there before. The hardship we have here with the proposal is the aspect ratio, obviously, and the size. For readability with the traffic flows on these roads, we definitely have a hardship of readability and lack of identification. This size sign, though the code, you know, states is too large, is really needed to be able to display the message that's needed for people to be able to safely read this when they're, you know, with traffic flows. The square footage of the actual McDonald's sign is smaller, so our ratio is different, but it comes down to readability. The sign's useless if it can't be read and safely read by traffic flows. So we're hoping that with the large reduction in size, you know, the setback now meeting code as well, that these issues can be seen by the board as, you know, a hardship that we've definitely went through to lose the other sign and give us approval to put this sign up. It's definitely an improvement. We've been in front of this board and been approved for a very similar sign at one of the other McDonald's stores at 14 and Coolidge. That sign is actually the same ratio thing, but it's actually larger. It's got more square footage. So we didn't go to that size sign. We scaled back to this one, hoping that it would be more pleasing to the board. So we don't feel that there'd be any detrimental effects. We went from a large sign that was there to a much smaller sign. There are other similar signs in the city. We've had variances for this very type of sign at another location.
Question, Mr. Godek.
Just one quick question. Is this a two-sided sign?
Yes.
So it's going to be displaying on both?
Yes.
Okay. Is that in consideration with the size requirements that of a monument sign, that the area is just not on one side but on both?
No, the way the area is calculated, it's meant for one side. If it's double-sided, it doesn't change what's allowed on either side. So obviously one wouldn't be able, yeah. if they're the same size, they both need to stay within the maximum sign area.
You don't add them together and include that?
No, we don't add them together to get total by, when we say it needs to have a maximum of 42 square feet, we mean one face. If it's a double-sided sign, has to have.
Okay. I actually agree with the petitioner, it's an improvement, it's not that much more. I'm not having a particular problem with it.
I have a question. I'm looking at your facility right now, and there's a white wall.
Yeah, the brick wall that's around the sidewalk?
Yeah, that stays, right?
Yes, yep.
Will this sign be above that? Is that why the base is 2 feet 8 inches?
It's gonna be right at the top level of that.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's probably the consideration, is to get it above that so people could
Yes,
see? Okay,
absolutely.
that makes sense. And that, the giant shrub that's there, are you gonna remove that?
Well, we're gonna have to, there's a limited space where we can put the sign,
Yeah.
so there might be a few shrubs that have to come out.
Right,
We've gotta meet the setback requirement of 10 feet.
okay. Doug, is that 10 feet from the curb?
It's 10 feet from the lot line.
Oh, so it's gotta go back.
It's not.
Probably where the shrub
way
is.
They have it shown on their plan, it would comply with with 10 feet from the property or right-of-way line.
Okay.
Not necessarily the curb line,
Okay.
but as shown, it would meet that required setback.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Is there a motion? Mr. Godek?
Move to approve SV 191115 sign variances as presented.
There's a motion to approve. Is there support?
Support.
Support by mayor. Any discussion?
Yes, I have,
Zada?
oh, sorry.
I just got a quick question. Doug, Mr. Hedges, our aspect ratio would be more narrow, correct?
It's, yeah, 16 to 9 would be narrower, because it's, I believe, I don't have the exact ordinance language in front of me,
So,
but I
well,
believe that the dimension measures width first, then height.
well,
Yeah, it's width, 16 width to 9 height. So our standard would actually make it shorter, not necessarily longer.
okay, and I guess my question is, what is the purpose behind the particular aspect ratio ordinance? I'm not familiar with the purpose of that.
I'm not that familiar also, but I believe the intent of it was to not wind up with EMCs that are extremely narrow,
Right.
long bands, or extremely, tall, skinny, signs that change regularly. That it would be a noticeable size and not have oddly shaped electronic message centers, I believe was the purpose of that, to not have ones that are, just, a few inches in height at the bottom of a sign continually changing.
And I think also too, when we looked at it, with the existing area that you're allowed to have for signs, we didn't want it to, kind of what Doug's saying as well, but you didn't want to have like the message board become the sign. So as a part of it, if you have certain dimensions, then it really becomes more of a messaging center versus a big square sign that says, I don't know, pets are us or whatever, so.
Okay, I appreciate that. This is, of course, more square. What they're proposing is more square.
Yes.
And I was just seeking, if I'm gonna vote for a variance, I want to know what the purpose was for the original ordinance. And I guess I sort of understand you're trying to avoid, that's a minimum, our ratio. You don't want a little thin sign, but you don't want one that is like a TV screen either.
Correct.
Okay. This is a slightly different one. This is okay, thanks. I have another question.
Yes.
For the petitioner. Okay, you're not the operator, but.
The operator's here.
Okay,
Yep.
and of course, one of the things that happens with these signs is they don't get operated that follow the ordinance. And I drive by these things all the time, and you mentioned the other McDonald's, and that happened at the other McDonald's. When I go by it, it's flipping at 8 seconds, then 30 seconds. So I would like some sort of response. How are you going to operate this sign?
Andrew Kostecki, owner-operator. I actually had these guys come out after the last variance meeting and reinstall the new software communications to these signs. So now we do it in-house. Part of our problem was they were using messages that would
Go to the microphone.
messages that would possibly be used at a different location that was outside of the city of Royal Oak, and put it on like Shamrock Shake and put it on for 15 seconds. And then we wouldn't know because it was done through a different company. Now we just eliminated that. We got the programming all set up ourselves. So now it's no videos, no pictures, 30 seconds. That's it. You know, no one else is in charge. It's us only.
Okay,
So,
I appreciate that.
just to keep us in line with the city.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and support. Is there any more discussion? Not seeing all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is sign variance 191116, request to replace the electronic message center on freestanding sign for religious institution Royal Oak First United Methodist Church at 320 West 7th Street, with variances to allow sign types prohibited within designated sign area. Freestanding sign and electronic message center. Mr. Hedges.
Yes, this is for the Royal Oak First United Methodist Church at the corner of Washington and 7th. The church currently has an existing freestanding sign with an electronic message center that was approved under a previous sign ordinance. Under the current sign ordinance, the church property is located within sign area 3. That is considered the downtown sign area. And under that sign area, it doesn't allows neither freestanding signs nor electronic message centers. What the church is proposing is to just replace the EMC on their freestanding sign. But since it is in an area that doesn't allow them, they would need variance from the board to allow them to replace the EMC on their existing sign.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hedges? Is the petitioner here?
Thank you for allowing us to present this to you. My name is Brian Tolley with Ideation Orange, and we have Mr. Dustin here with representing the church. So as you can see on this, the church has had, I believe, this sign in place for about 13, 14 years, and it became inoperable after, a few years ago. The system was outdated. Basically, the illumination was defective over time. So in order to bring what is now currently a dark sign back into life that would communicate to the community as a whole, the events and the services they provide, they'd like to replace that. It's quite an investment to do that. I'm sure that they had to raise money over the past few years in order to have enough money to do that. And I think possibly during that period of time is when ordinances may have been adjusted to the betterment of the city. So I think if you look at the setback for this on page PO1, it shows it has a 26-foot setback from Washington Avenue, 8 foot from the actual sidewalk on Washington, 32 feet from 7th Street. There is quite a bit of property that is around this particular building, so not allowing them to keep this monument sign functional would be a detriment to the church. It would need to be looked at differently than possible other businesses that this resides in. So we are in effect saying the illumination, the light bulb went out. We'd like to put the light bulb back on. The new technology, just like apps as your phones become new, certain apps you can't use again, you need to upload new ones, they need to get new software that'll work. The fortunate thing at this time is that all the software controls how bright signs are, how long they can control when they're operable. Obviously, the requirements under the the sign ordinance that does allow that in the certain area does require the timing of these, as you heard in the previous petitioner. They would control that. They would have all control of whatever you, as a board, would ask them to have.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, Matt. Of course.
So I grew up in this church. I'm a lifelong resident of Royal Oak, and I grew up in this church, but I've been missing from this church for about 20 years, and a couple of years ago I came back. And one of the things we discussed when I came back was, if you look at a Google Earth view of downtown, is that space there in front of the church is one of the few green spaces in downtown. And in talking with a few people, we decided we really wanted to make something out of that green space. Right now, Arts Beats and Eats is used as a resting center for people who, it's shaded. We use it for Spooktacular, it's used for that. A lot of the residents of the tower use it for their dogs, and we're addressing that as well. But what we're looking to do with that is create a really nice green space, look at the landscape, make it something that's really nice, because there isn't much of that in the downtown. But part of it, this sign was a big investment, and it was either, and I was not back at the church at the time, it was either 2003 or 2004 when that went up, and they're guessing the cost was about $40,000. So what has happened, to my understanding, and I'm covering for Charlene Condrat, she's the president of the trustees, or the chair of the trustees, and her husband surprised her with a trip down to the Caribbean, so she asked if I could fill in. So I've been doing a lot of homework over.
For a sign variance?
Yes.
We could have filled in for her down in the Caribbean.
Oh, I know, this sucker, anyhow. But anyhow, I've done a lot of research on this, so my understanding is the current unit that's in there, they got a really good deal on, 15, 16 years ago, whatever it was. The parts that would be required to replace it are hard to find, and the advice was, you're better off going with something new. The new piece, we'd be able to use the same lifeline that goes to the church, the same inside piece, although, as he mentioned, we'd have better software, which is, believe me, if you know the church staff, the easier the software, the better. The sign, again, just so you understand, no images. We'll turn it off between midnight and 6. We'll dim it whenever it needed to be. The type of things you'll see on the sign will be like, we collect pillows for Common Ground. We collected 500 pillows. Bring pillows to our church, please. We collected 8,000 pairs of socks just in the last couple months for the homeless. We serve homeless meals every day of the week, Monday through Friday. We want to be able to advertise that. We're not going to be pitching anything. We're not going to be flashing anything. I don't think I'm allowed to do this, but I've got pretty much a signed document from every business around us that is in support of this, including Pronto. And Pronto, their prime seating area, as you might know, is at what would be the southeast corner of their business. So their nice little corner glassed-in area there, these people will be looking directly at the sign, but the ownership feels that it's a good thing, and they're looking at the overall picture, what we're hoping to do with the entire green space there. But this is part of it, and it's important to us. There was investment made by a lot of families 16, 17 years ago, really before that, to raise the money to get to the point to do what they have, and what we have now, which is not working. And we've made another investment, and we're looking just to replace what we had, and we're not looking to do anything flashing, anything crazy. We just want to continue with what we had, and I'll let you know how crazy it is. I've been back 2 years. I've been helping with this kind of infrastructure stuff, and if you've been around the church, you'll notice that lately you can see the church better at night because there's a light that comes on, and I was told, how come the church isn't lit? And they said, well, the lights haven't worked for a couple of years. So I came in about a month ago on a Saturday. I said, I'm going to figure this out. So I went and I found the switch and I turned it on, and it worked. So this is where we're at on this. So all I'm asking is that you can take a look at this. I looked at the hardships. I'm not sure if we really fit directly with these hardships, but all we want to do is just continue having what we had. I guess if this doesn't work, we can go back, and I assume we'd be able to do this, find the parts to fix the old version of the sign and get it working and just go that route. I would much prefer to do something that looks better and makes more sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Casada?
Just like I say, appreciate your good works that you do, and very much appreciated. The sign operation is a concern, as I expressed, and we've expressed on this panel before. There is an ordinance. There was a question, whatever you want us to do, we want you to conform with the ordinance. The ordinance has timing, and I think it has lumens, limitations, and that's what we want you to do. So if you're gonna do that, you're probably gonna get more support from me.
I think we, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure we'll do it.
Well, it means it's not gonna be flashing and too bright, and the people sitting at Prontos aren't gonna get, you know.
Absolutely not, and they'll let us know about it if it is, but we would not let that happen.
All right, well, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Godek?
I think the ordinance states, just so people are clear about that, how often the sign can statically change. I think it's once every 30 seconds.
30 seconds, I believe, yes.
So, you know, just update the signs once every 30 seconds and not too bright, and you got my vote too.
Any other questions for the petitioner? If not, is there a motion?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Hedges.
Sure.
So this, we've had other requests like this, other requests in front of us having to do with electronic messaging signs. Have any of them been like this, that is just changing the digital guts of a sign?
Not that I can recall. Most of them been for new EMCs.
And different configuration, different changes, going from a hand lettered, sign to a digital sign? So this is, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mayor?
For approval? Support.
Okay, there's been a motion by the mayor and support by Mr. Godek. Any discussion on this motion? Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, it's, at a 10,000-foot level, this is the status quo. You know, at a 5,000-foot level, it's gonna be a much better improvement because, it's gonna look better, the sign will operate, and, do its purpose. And so, I think just based on all the things and the hardship they're facing, this is a good, request, and certainly since I made the motion, often one supports the motion they make, not always, but I'll be supporting this motion.
Ms. Beakey?
I just wanted to make a comment that I like very much the fact that this sign, as it stands now with the brick and such, is aesthetically pleasing. And also, I'm very happy and excited to hear that you're thinking more about how you can make this landscape even a bigger asset to the community and to the downtown area too, because I agree with you, it's one of the few green spaces. And again, as I often say, if we could look into the thing and again, native plantings, thinking about our pollinators and our birds, all of those things combined together and support us as well, not only aesthetically, but also in our health and such. And so I'd encourage you to look into that. But I think just replacing this central part and keeping, I think it's a better looking sign than most with all the brick and such. And so I appreciate that you're gonna repair it.
I appreciate that, and we're going to invite you to those meetings because they've been very interesting so far.
Mr. Casada?
I'll just comment, just going back to this green space. The issues here are that it's a monument sign, you're not allowed to have a monument sign, and that electronic messaging signs aren't allowed in this area. But it's already there, and a monument sign, right, you guys have the only lawn in downtown, and so a monument sign is appropriate for that. It's already there, and I also see this as more of a repair. It was a good question about have we had this particular thing before. I don't remember it. An electronic sign changes anyways, so it's not a matter of changing the face of the sign or changing the use. It seems very much like a repair to me rather than a new use, so I'm going to support the motion.
Any other comments? Not seeing all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Despite having Mr. Dunstan here, we found success.
Okay, now we're going back to new business. Item 3, this is a public hearing for zoning ordinance text amendments for marijuana establishments and medical marijuana facilities. There's article under A, B, C, and D. A variety of articles are part of this, going to be discussed by Mr. Hedges. And are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
As directed, we have presented draft language for amending the zoning ordinance to allow marijuana uses that are allowed under both the Michigan Regulation of Taxation of Marijuana Act and also the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. You have seen this language at the last 3 previous meetings. There've been a few revisions have been made, but this is the language is the same that was presented at the last meeting, October 8th. I'll go through some of the bullet points that the text would do. The text adds definitions for marijuana establishments and medical marijuana facilities that have been taken from both of the state acts. The text amendments would allow retailers, micro-businesses, and provisioning centers as special land uses in both the general business and general industrial zoning districts. It would allow growers, processors, compliance facilities, and transporters as special land uses, but only in the general industrial zoning district. All marijuana uses would require a special land use permit, subject to final approval by the city commission upon recommendation from the planning commission. Applications for any special land use permit for a marijuana use would need to include documentation of pre-qualification for a license from the state of Michigan, and also that a complete application for a local license from the city of Royal Oak has been accepted. 1,000-foot setback would be required from any marijuana use from existing K through 12 schools. And also a 1,000-foot setback would be required between retailers, micro-businesses, and provisioning centers. No setback would be required between growers, processors, and any other uses. Certain uses allowed under emergency rules adopted by the state, such as designated consumption establishments and excess marijuana growers and temporary marijuana events, would not be allowed under the zoning ordinance changes. Drive-through lanes or walk-up windows would also be prohibited. There would be standards for both signage and lighting and architectural enhancements to buildings for any marijuana uses. There would also be standards banning exterior security curtains or metal bars or gates. However, interior security devices that are retractable would be permitted. There would be standards added to require some form of green infrastructure with all site plans for marijuana uses. The standards would also allow the city commission to have the authority to impose reasonable conditions as part of their review and approval of any marijuana use. Would also give them the authority to waive or modify regulations under the zoning ordinance as part of their review of a special land use permit. The standards would also add parking for retailers and provisioning centers. That would be the same standard that's currently applied to medical offices and convenience stores, which is 1 space for every 200 square feet of usable floor area. Parking for the processing and growing and other uses would be applied the same standard for most manufacturing industrial uses, which is 1 space for every 800 square feet of usable floor area. Other operational standards such as hours of operation, security plan, disposal of plants and byproducts, odor control, et cetera, would not be addressed within the zoning ordinance. Those would be reserved for the previously mentioned licensing ordinance, which is being drafted in conjunction with this for issuing local licenses from the city of Royal Oak. Again, I draw the commission's attention to the criteria for zoning ordinance text amendments listed in section 770-130 of the zoning ordinance. Again, since this is a change to the language of the zoning ordinance, it's the commission's responsibility to offer a recommendation to the city commission. So any action tonight should be referencing that this, a recommendatory action to the city commission to either adopt or reject the text amendments as presented. The commission has any questions on the specifics of the text as written, be happy to answer those at this time.
Mr. Hedges, are there any questions? Ms. Douglas?
Not so much questions, but, some people may realize that the city commission itself has addressed this subject a couple of times in two public meetings, one public discussion and a work session. And we've heard extensively from the city attorney on some of the issues or conditions that they've taken into consideration in their recommendations. And I've got a couple of these points here, but I wondered if either Mr. Hedges or Mr. Liss might be willing to talk about, for example, we've had questions why we're not allowing these businesses in the CBD. There are questions about, should we be imposing, why are we only using zoning to control these locations? What are the issues or what issues do we face locating these establishments near residential neighborhoods, as is inevitable if you put them on Woodward Avenue? So I'd just be interested in hearing somebody besides me address those points.
Well, as far as the zoning districts they're proposed in, much of that came from the survey that was done for the city commission. I believe it was Cobalt Survey Services. Part of the data that came from that was the survey results indicated there was significant support for allowing these uses in industrial areas and along Woodward Avenue. There was not support for allowing them in the downtown from that survey. That's where the main emphasis came from, allowing these in general business and general industrial, not necessarily the central business district, was mostly from the survey results. There was also discussion at previous meetings that it was felt that, based on, the nature of the uses, that they would be better suited in the general business zoning district and not central business, that pretty much the feelings went along line with the survey results. Other zoning districts that weren't necessarily addressed within the survey results, such as the neighborhood zoning business district we looked at, but with the setback from schools, we noticed that a significant number of those site zone neighborhood business would be eliminated by that setback. So that and the fact that it's staff's position that many of these uses are going to rely on a market area which is greater than that of just the city's population. From the purpose and intent statements in both our master plan and the zoning ordinance, state that any commercial uses that rely on market areas greater than the city are more encouraged for general business zoning and not neighborhood business zoning. So that's essentially where the two zoning districts that we're proposing came from, mostly from the results of the Cobalt survey.
How many businesses, and particularly thinking about Woodward, the general business zoning, given the setbacks we were talking about from schools and from other marijuana-related businesses, what's the maximum number of businesses we could wind up with on Woodward?
Well, we have come up with some numbers. Again, they're preliminary and subject to exactly where businesses locate, but based on our research of allowing them within general business and general industrial zoning and applying a 1,000 foot setback from existing schools, we're looking at potentially, where did I put my numbers? I believe it was 19 total sites together. I believe it was 11 within general business zoning on Woodward would be potentially available, and 8 within general industrial zoning.
And, in other communities, they have established criteria for these businesses other than just zoning. And clearly, we are requiring that they have state licensing approval, and that they meet licensing requirements that the city will establish at some future point. But we have not set any sort of qualitative standards to decide which businesses we're going to pick, that is to pick winners. Can you talk a little bit about why we've taken the approach that we have?
Some of those standards are just simply not well-suited for a zoning regulation. Zoning typically deals with land use, dimensional setbacks, things on that, such as that. Adopting standards in a zoning ordinance relating to a set number of uses that may be allowed, it's not a very difficult to enforce through zoning. They're more enforceable through such as a separate licensing ordinance. The zoning ordinance text amendments before you, we tried to stick to just zoning and land use issues. For example, we address, a setback from existing schools, but we don't address a set number of licenses that might be available. We don't address operational standards. Again, not something can be successfully enforced under zoning. Same issue with other operational standards such as odor control, disposal, things of that nature. Something that's difficult to address under zoning. And we've tried to stick to just land use issues with the zoning ordinance text amendments before you as to what uses are allowed, where they're allowed, and not much else from there. That most of the other issues would have to be addressed through a licensing ordinance.
And the decision to use zoning as a criteria, I will say, is as opposed to dictating the number of businesses, for example, that we might allow in the city, which we heard from our city attorney, is that once you start, picking winners and deciding how many businesses you're going to allow, you then have to decide how you're going to choose those. And our legal staff was concerned about the possibility of lawsuits, whereas zoning is a far more quantitative approach and therefore more defensible.
Yeah, again, we've tried to stick with just land use issues. Where in the city could they be allowed? Not necessarily under what conditions could they be allowed.
Good, thank you. Those are the points I wanted to make.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? When you note the number of businesses that might be potential for general business and industrial, 11 and 18 or whatever they were, does that relate to the actual number of sites, or is that the number of sites kind of measured against vacancies right now? Because when I look at that map, I'm just wondering, trying to understand if those are all sites or those.
Those numbers I stated were sites that would be possible for development as a marijuana use if these standards were adopted.
Okay.
Doesn't relate to what's there now or how many vacancies
It does not,
there are. It's more how many properties would be eligible.
generally.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they're vacant or not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Mayor?
Just a follow-up question on that. That just assumes, that's a total eligibility number of properties, but as soon as you start plopping one or two of these down, then those numbers change because depending on where they're located, the other 1,000-foot, requirement could fit in.
Yeah, they tried to preface that the numbers were estimates and depending on exactly where one may locate.
Right, because if you start on the edge.
It could reduce the number that are potentially available. Because again, we don't know exactly where they're going to locate.
Right.
But once they do, and if it's a retailer and no other retailer can be within 1,000 feet, then those numbers may change.
Right.
But just.
It's a moving, living, breathing creature depending on.
It's an
more than two dimensions here.
It's an estimate.
Yeah.
So.
Mr. Casada?
This is really a question probably for Mr. List. What does the word existing mean in these amendments? In terms of, you say, an existing business. Right now, there are no existing marijuana businesses, and people are gonna go through a process. They're gonna apply for licenses at the state, apply for the licenses here. They're gonna go through a number of things they have to do before they open their business. So my question is, what does existing mean?
I'm going to have to defer to Mr. Hedges. I didn't have any input in the draft.
Two things on it. By existing, we mean it's in existence at the time an application comes in. So obviously, our first application for a marijuana use, there won't be any other existing micro businesses within 1,000 feet. So that, or any other existing retailers or micro businesses within 1,000 feet. So the second one to come in, yeah, then that standard begins to be applied, where we now have an existing retail use where we can measure the 1,000-foot setback from.
Here's what I'm envisioning. What if you got two businesses racing 500 feet apart from each other? When do they become existing?
When they're approved by both Planning Commission and they have their applicable state and local licensing. I guess begins when they're approved by this body. Once they're approved, then we have an approved one in that location. Therefore, the Planning Commission would not be able to approve another one within that distance, even if they may not have been, they're up and operating at that point.
Well, I'm asking a question because I can see an issue here, because nobody exists right now. And somebody who gets planning, we get planning commission approval, we see projects all the time that don't get built, that don't come into existence. So if we're gonna have an ordinance that is based on existence, then existence has to be defined somehow, or there has to be something other than the zoning ordinance to govern it. So I'm asking the question.
Well, I guess we can fall back to, current existing zoning, not to use the word existing again, standards, but once a site plan's approved, they've got 1 year to secure building permits and start work. If a plan is approved and within 1 year, they've taken no follow-up action to develop it, and we get another one, under the terms of the ordinance, that prior approval expired after 1 year.
Okay,
So somebody can't just sit on an approval and to keep others from developing around it, they've still got to follow through and under, the standards and open.
Okay, so the way you're seeing it, that planning commission, special land use approval would say, okay, now you're existing. Now, nobody else in these categories can open within 1,000 feet of this now approved. They don't have to open, they don't have to build anything, they don't have to.
They've got 1 year to build and open. After that 1 year, their approval lapses.
So, some clarity. So I think, if I hear you correctly, Mr. Casada, if it leaves the planning commission, the first one, and it's approved, and the second one comes in, well, that one's approved, the second one better be looking for a location beyond the 1,000 foot.
Yes.
Okay.
We assume it's gonna go through, and then at the moment that it doesn't, so existing defines as approved, right? So if we say an existing business, then that really is an approved business.
Yeah, because I don't assume necessarily it's gonna, you say it's gonna go through. I'm not assuming it's gonna.
It's existing for 365 days.
Yeah, an existing approval or existing establishment, maybe that would be a little, right?
Yeah, because technically, if once a use has been approved, and they're still going through a process of permitting, the planning commission and the city commission then can't approve another one that's within that setback, unless, of course, the city commission waives it. Because you've got one they have the authorization to go forward and develop a site, but again, it says after 1 year, if no action's been taken, then the approval lapses.
Okay, and then the back end, when does existence cease? If you have a business, and how is it measured when it ceases existing?
I can't answer that one.
Yeah, some of these are, I don't know what the
I'd have to defer to
implications of
Dave and
these
Mark
are.
on that one.
But I just see the potential for lots of confusion. It could be good, it could be bad, it's a policy issue, but it certainly is an issue, I think.
Well, I think that's just, we're here to discuss this. I think Mr. Casada raises excellent points here. And, this is a first draft. We push that back to the planning department and the law department to answer Mr. Casada's questions in subsequent iterations.
Or just have a.
Because on one hand, when it ceases to exist, could just be 365 days and 1 minute. if they don't have a permit, if they don't
Or
act
if
on
they
their
go
permit.
into bankruptcy or receivership or,
But if they do build and they occupy, and then all of a sudden
Yeah, when
they're
do they
not
cease?
occupied
How do you know they're
anymore,
closed?
Right.
how do you know they're closed? And then do they, when you find out they're closed, then is that the clock tick then that they're no longer in existence? So we need some definition.
Yeah, I think this is a unique ordinance because it's a dynamic between two businesses. Usually when we say existing, we're talking about on your site. You come into you come in and say, I've got some existing use, or I've got existing building, but it's on the same site. This is maybe unique. It's a dynamic between different sites.
Same dynamic with liquor licenses.
I'm a planning commissioner. What do I know about liquor licenses?
I mean, there are examples of businesses who wanted to get liquor license, but they're like 10 feet too close to an existing liquor license. If that one were to close, they would be able to get a liquor license, or at least apply for it with higher chances.
Not expressing an opinion, but maybe then that regimen might need to be adopted. I don't know, for this.
I'm not gonna venture an opinion on that.
This could be something that winds up in the subsequent city licensing process, not necessarily the zoning amendment, ordinance. I mean, the definition of what amounts to being closed.
right. Because I would argue you could have a very clever business person come in and say, okay, well, it's cheaper for me to buy the building and just start strategically buying them. Maybe they get approved, maybe they don't, or let's say they get approved, you could just have them open. You know, you could have the license, you could have the thing, and they're open 1 minute a day, and now you've essentially blocked everybody else out by strategically doing this. So I think Commissioner Douglas is right. Something in the license, you know, if you're gonna be open, you gotta be a business. You can't be open, you know, 1 day a week or something like that, you know, because there is a service model for this as well. We don't want to create, I guess, reverse arbitrage or something like that. I don't know what the technical term would be.
Fancy talk.
Loud one. Well, arbitrage, I mean, I'm just thinking of a way to go in and basically buy up all the options, you know, ahead of time.
Create a monopoly for a
Yeah,
big business.
basically indirectly create a monopoly by having fake storefronts and then, you know, I don't know if that math works. I mean, I don't know what the overhead is and all these things to run these, but I mean, it is possible. But I do also think too, because you're gonna have an immediacy, unlike maybe liquor licenses or whatever, this is something where you're probably gonna get multiple applicants all at the same time, right? And then you could have a situation where, you know, okay, because this one was approved and then the next one on the agenda item alphabetically can't get approved. So I think we have to look at that as well.
Is there any restriction on one company doing exactly what you proposed in our zoning ordinance?
I think it would have to be addressed in licensing, you know what I mean? Like you know, if you, this zoning, like Mr. Hedges said, is all about land use. But I think in the licensing, you could dictate certain things that say, you know, how you're gonna conduct your
No
business.
more than certain licenses per business, or can't do that?
No, but I think you could say you have to operate it as a business and you have to,
So what stops, big bucks marijuana company number one from buying up the businesses, applying for all the licenses, and having one company, one monopoly doing this with our current?
yeah, it's under state law, the way the law is structured, my understanding, the state municipalities are very restricted in how we can, you know, address those concerns, unfortunately. I mean, that's the tricky part of this. I mean, my preference is, you know, I'll say it outright, but I won't obviously vote this way or anything like that. I'll be compliant with the law, but, you know, as a person, I believe that local operators should always get, you know, first shot. I think smaller, you know, I don't want to see a bunch of transplants come in from Colorado, headquartered in California, you know, take up our land. I'd rather see this be an organic, excuse the pun, homegrown thing. But, you know, we are handcuffed by the wisdom of the state, once again, in a lot of cases.
Any other discussion? Well, this is a public hearing, so we should open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here in the audience that would, yes, sir?
Thank you.
And I'll remind the audience, 3 minutes per person.
My name is
is Aaron Geyer. I'm a Royal Oak resident. I've been a Royal Oak resident for 27 years. I'm also a licensed attorney, and I do extensive licensing work both in municipalities and with the MRA. There was a question that was thrown across the board dealing with existing licenses. And I think the board here is getting a little confused because really we're dealing with two separate issues. We're dealing with the issue of zoning and we're dealing with the issue of the ordinance itself. Mayor, you mentioned something about wanting to possibly give an advantage to local ownership or local businesses. That's addressed in the local ordinance. In other words, your local ordinance is going to set up the criteria of how and how many licenses will be issued. Your licenses are either going to be issued on a merit-based system or your licenses are going to be issued on a lottery-based system. Now, Councilman, you indicated about existing licenses and you had trouble with the word existing. Existing is going to come into play more for when a license becomes available after the group has already been formed. In other words, if the city determines that they want to issue 5 licenses, and one of the original 5 licensees, for whatever reason, no longer is a viable entity. And so now we have the availability of this additional license. And that licensee wants to look for a location. You've got limitations. You can't be within an existing location. That's where you're going to go with that. It sets the parameters. You're not so much concerned with the first group because the first group are going to be addressed as a whole. And when the licenses are issued, if there are 5 locations, 6 locations, 11 possible locations, that's all going to be defined in the ordinance. And so when the licenses are issued, they will determine, yes, you can have a license, you can have a license, you can have a license because you are all within that 1,000-foot boundary of each other. That's where you're going with the word existing. Not for the monopoly as Mr. Godek suggested, because that doesn't make sense. First of all, there aren't that many companies that have that level of capitalization. But again, that's all going to be determined in the ordinance. This is the first step of the process.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next. Yes. Your name, please?
Good evening. Jen Zielinski with Damascus Consulting and Development. We're a multi-client government consulting organization, and we've been working cannabis policy for about 5 or 6 years now. So I do have some feedback relative to the ordinance discussions that have taken place tonight. First of all, I certainly agree and do want to continue to encourage you to keep these facilities with an opportunity to locate in the general business district. It's going to certainly allow for ease of access. Some of these facilities on the retail side can see anywhere from 100 to 200 customers per day. And typically these customers are commuting individually. They're not coming by a busload. So traffic counts and ease of access in and out of the facility is definitely something that you want to consider. For example, the city of Berkeley is requiring that all retail marijuana facilities are required to have an ingress-egress on a main road for just that purpose because of the amount of traffic that will be in and out of these facilities. Southfield has done something similarly by allowing them on Northwestern Highway. So I certainly want to commend you and continue to encourage you to continue down that path for ease of access, transportation purposes. Another item that I have is the green infrastructure. This is one of the first times I can honestly say I've seen this in a Michigan ordinance. We do see this in some other states, more so on the West Coast. And additionally, this is more of something that's imposed on an industrial or a warehouse type facility. So what such mandates might be contemplated. This provision is not uncommon in industrial areas or large commercial facilities. However, this can be far more challenging for a retail environment, especially on a much smaller scale. So under what situations would this be applied? If it would be if it's the exterior of a facility, it's largely going to be untouched. Would that be treated differently than an entire interior-exterior reno? And how is that building going to have limited space or a shared roof, have limited exterior and or a shared roof to be expected to satisfy the requirements of the green infrastructure? Most building tactics are very appropriate for, this green building tactic, again, is appropriate for warehousing, the cultivation and manufacturing. However, the retail might have a tough time. Oh, I didn't even see my clock go.
I'm sorry. I'm keeping.
Well, I will have to email you because there's a lot of different things in here that are hugely up for consideration. I've worked in hundreds of municipalities. I've seen what works and what doesn't. So I will have to follow up with an email. Is there a contact person for the Planning Commission on the website?
Yes.
Okay, who is that?
Tim Twin.
Tim Twin.
If you send it to him, he sends us.
Yes.
forwards it
Okay,
all
yeah,
to us.
there's a lot of things here that really need to be considered
Yeah,
for
appreciate
further.
it. Is there anyone else? Yes, in the back?
My name is Rich Mariani. I'm resident of Royal Oak, and just have a quick comments about the ordinance issue. I think that it would be very convenient to have these medical marijuana facilities closer to our city for convenience and ease of access. I think that the residents of Royal Oak would be very beneficial to have that close and not have to commute to find it. And yeah, that's just the only thing I really had to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, right here.
Good evening. My name's Kelly Geyer. I'm the wife of Aaron Geyer. He spoke about the law of medical marijuana or adult recreational use. And I'm going to speak about the emotional part of it or the societal part of it. For 27 years, I've lived here. For 11 years, I worked within the Royal Oak community, serving on many PTAs. PTA president for Whittier Elementary, the first Royal Oak Middle School PTSA president. I was on the middle school transition team. I served on the Royal Oak Interclub Council, the Royal Oak Community Coalition. I served and I worked as a Royal Oak Schools paraprofessional. I'm also currently, right now, since 2005, worked and gained incredible knowledge in the medical field. I work for one of the largest orthopedic surgeon groups in the metro area. So tonight I'm here to advocate for a positive move forward in our strengthening our community here by tapping into the revenue resources found within this growing, and I don't, please excuse the pun, of this current medical marijuana or adult medical marijuana or adult marijuana market. I'm urging the Planning Commission to allow the necessary zoning changes so we can move closer to what our sister communities are doing in Warren, Berkeley, Southfield, and Ferndale. I've done a lot of extensive research on this, both personally and professionally. I have a family member who, after 3 years of conservative medical treatment, had to resort to medical marijuana. Not by choice, but it was the only option, and he's pain-free when he's partaking in that. So what I'd like to say is, in California, a 2019 Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatric found that recreational adult use laws, they saw an 8% decrease in odds of marijuana use in teens. Or that same article found no evidence that legalization of medical marijuana encouraged marijuana use in their youth. California did a 2018 RAND Corporation research project that found no negative relationship between dispensary allowance and property crime rates. In fact, the results suggested dispensaries helped reduce crime. Furthermore, a 2018 Police Quarterly article found that Colorado and Washington State suggested no negative effects of legalization on crime clearance rates. Evidence suggested that some crime clearance rates improved. So what I'm suggesting is that we base our decisions on fact, not fear. I encourage the commission to approve these zoning changes so that we can move forward with sound base decision-making and not using some outdated, ill-advised, or preconceived knowledge of marijuana.
Thank you.
I thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hello, my name is Joshua Robinson. I'm a Royal Oak resident as well. I just wanted to step up here and tell you guys that I think that it'd be a great idea, and I do urge you to move forward with putting these type of things in our community. Seems to me that like the ease of access thing is a big point I like to hammer on. My commute from Royal Oak to Pontiac, and it's a little bit difficult for me to get to my medicine going off the beaten path into some of the industrial areas. Another thing I think putting them on Warwood would, allude to the ease of access of the facilities, and I think that if you guys did everything the right way, going about like the zoning restrictions and the licensing things, there can be great things that come of these things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening. I'm starting my timer, so we don't have a problem. My name is Sergio Basmajian, and I've had a business here and some real estate properties for the last about 22 years. I'm glad to see the city's finally moving forward with this. But a couple of questions I have, because I've attended the previous meetings, and today's the first time, so these are questions, not just statements, so you can answer them when the general public comments are done. Previous times, you guys have always said that two things. One, that you guys were going to look at a merit-based system, and kind of today you guys said, well, when the application is put in and it's accepted, or the first one's accepted, so is it going to be a lottery or is it going to be a merit-based system? Secondly, was you guys had talked about before limit, and I mean meaning how many you guys are going to issue and so forth. And then today again you're leaning a little bit more where the zoning is going to say how many is going to be allowed. Or are both question 1 and 2 going to be answered by the city commission in their ordinance? And thirdly, which was kind of confusing, and maybe I just don't understand that properly, was you guys were saying that, well, when that applicant comes in front of us and gets approved, well, if it's already zoned for that area, are you still going to make it a special land use requirement where they're going to have to come and get a variance to get it approved? That's the part I don't understand, because if you're changing the zoning to allow that, why do they have to come to the planning commission to get approved for that? You see what I'm saying? So is it going to be like, how are you going to mark the first application that because I thought, and I think that's also better, and I think that is something that you guys should do, is have the first round of applications, and from there say, okay, we feel this is the most qualified applicant, and then go down the road, because this is a chance for you guys to approve things that will probably better the city, because there's probably going to be properties that are more blighted, and there's also going to be different aspects where one will be a lot better candidate than the other candidate, and not just do first come, first serve. So those are basically the three questions that I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right here in the front and then in the back?
Hello, Jonathan Clark from Quality Roots at 123 South Main Street, right behind the building. Wanted to discuss, I guess, a few people mentioned very similar things that are kind of in the same approach that I was going with, and not allowing them in the neighborhood business district or in the zone. I know according to the Cobalt survey, the downtown district kind of had, it was, less than 50% no's, but there was enough no's to, which I understand the reason behind not allowing in the central business district. But regarding the neighborhood business district, when looking at it, these properties don't necessarily differ from the general business district when you talk about from churches, schools, and residential buffering. So if we're not really considering anything that go along with the residential buffering, why isn't the neighborhood business zones in there? From the lady behind me who mentioned the amount of people that come to these facilities a day, when we talk about Woodward and the parking that Woodward has, there are going to be a lot of troubles as far as how much traffic can those sites support, as far as even from the I believe it's state parking along Woodward, if I'm not mistaken, or even if it's city. Meanwhile, in the neighborhood business district, there are a bunch of properties, including the ones that we have, that are not only blighted, contaminated, as well as enough room to have the adequate amount of parking for this use. So just wanted to kind of put out there as far as allowing the neighborhood business zone to be part of this, and not just the general business, just due to the fact that, from residential buffering, and then the schools that you guys already have in there, it kind of is the same game. So I just want to point that out there for the board.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Scott Roberts, 2125 East Hudson. I'm a cannabis business lawyer as well. As a matter of fact, I was just engaged to draft an ordinance, so I know a thing or two about this, but I'm actually not here in that capacity, not getting paid to be here. I'm here in my personal capacity to, I guess, kind of critique the approach and suggest a couple tools that could be used as part of your regulatory toolbox to make this better and make the benefits of this kind of be felt throughout the city as opposed to small little corridors. So, I mean, currently we're basically turning Woodward into 8 Mile. I think that's probably not a good idea. I think that actually potentially weakens what is one of the city's strongest corridors, which I don't think really makes sense. I think we should be looking at this we should strengthen our weak corridors instead of potentially weaken our strong corridors. And there's a number of different ways to do it. The one that seems to be very popular among other cities, and I think it's a way to really target development in areas that could be redeveloped and repurposed, and that's the use of overlay districts. And that's to basically find a place, like wherever that may be, that could use redevelopment or repurposing, and then create an overlay district there, instead of kind of being locked into whatever, wherever the general business is and wherever the general industrial is. We can actually use kind of more of a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer when doing this. There's a couple other things you can do. I would probably say if you're going to keep all these things on Woodward, you want to increase the setbacks, probably to like 2,000 feet. I know there's been some people who have said you can't do it more than 1,000 facility to facility, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that is not the case. You can also, prioritize vacant properties the way Madison Heights did to kind of fill in some vacancies. And, I just think we could probably do better than the current, approach that is being proposed right now. We could take our weaknesses and make them strengths. We can improve property values throughout the city. And, we could, ensure ease of access as well, as opposed to, if you live on Woodward corridor, that's great. You have great ease of access. If you don't, you got to drive. And so I'm just, I put together a little packet that I would hope, I did this on my personal time, so I would hope you guys would take a look, and it just kind of suggests some tools that could be used, like the overlay districts, to kind of better use this ordinance, because, this is actually a unique opportunity that we have the ability to flood development where we want to flood it. And we should do that very smartly and use that as a way to kind of strengthen our weaknesses as opposed to potentially, weakening our strengths.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure.
Anyone else?
Actually, if he has some documents, it'd be, do you want to just, Mr. Godek, can you take it and pass it
Give them
down?
to Doug? Anyone else? Okay, not seeing, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to this side of the table. So, okay. Mr. Hedges, you've got a resolution in here that you've suggested or recommended?
It's a resolution that includes the draft text that you saw at the last meeting. If there's any changes that you would like to see, you can, of course, spell them out, but again, since this is a change to the text of the zoning ordinance, it requires a recommendation to the city commission, and then they have to make the final decision regarding approval.
If it was to be recommended this evening, when would it go to the city commission? Within the next month, or?
I don't believe that's been determined specifically yet.
Okay,
I believe the goal is to have both the changes to the zoning ordinance and then the separate licensing ordinance go before the city commission at the same time.
okay.
I don't know what the status of the licensing ordinance is, so I believe, again, the goal is to get them to not have one before the other, to have them both at the same time. So I can't say exactly when it'll be before the city commission at this time.
Okay.
Our target is February. I mean, we set a
okay.
target to get everything resolved.
Okay.
Because if we don't get it done by February, we have two actions. We either, force the commission to vote again to postpone it a little bit, the timeline. But what we did, and the way we did that is we put an expiration on our opt-out in February. So the intent is that it'll be addressed. We
Okay.
keep it moving as fast as
Okay,
possible.
I see. That helps, thank you. Ms. Douglas?
The one thing I heard, first of all, I want people to know that, and to answer maybe a couple questions, that our system is not based on merit. That is, we're not picking any winners and losers. People will have to meet a licensing requirement, but we are not deciding, once people meet those requirements, we are not picking winners and losers. So there's no lottery, there's no limit on the number of businesses that could establish here other than the geographic limitations we placed on it. But the one thing I heard tonight that maybe we do want to take a second look at is the amount of parking these establishments need to provide. Right now, we're defining it as a comparable medical establishment, I think. Do we want to possibly take to heart what we've heard here and increase the amount of parking we require, off-street parking that we require for these establishments?
That has been discussed at staff. We have had other outside interest contact us about that. What we do is we run into the reality, though, of all properties on Woodward and all properties in the general industrial district, that parking is going to be a problem no matter what standard we set. Which is one of the reasons why we've drafted it, so when the city commission reviews a special land use permit recommendation from the planning commission, they could then waive any parking that they may be short instead of forcing them to go before the zoning board of appeals and through jump through a bunch of other hoops. We debated, having a higher standard such as one space for every 100 square feet, or even the same standard as dine-in restaurants, one space for every 65 square feet. But again, we run into the situation, the higher we make that standard, the more applications are gonna need waivers. So we tried to do a balancing act of setting a number that, does provide them to provide a significant amount of parking without forcing all of them to need a parking waiver. So that's where we came in with the one for every 200 square feet for the retail uses. Could that be increased? If the commission desires, we could. But I'd just like the commission to be aware, if we do that, then you'll be looking at more applications needing some type of parking waiver. We think there's enough properties that developed appropriately could hit the parking target on Woodward, but obviously there's a lot that won't.
Right.
There's many properties on Woodward that can't meet any parking requirement, period, no matter what it is. So we tried to do a balancing act of requiring, parking that we would require for uses that might have a similar amount of traffic, a similar amount of volume of people visiting the site, balanced with how many of these are we gonna force into needing a waiver of parking.
So if the city commission digs in its heels and sticks by its requirements, that's yet another way of us to limit the number of establishments that pop up while we kind of monitor the situation.
It is, yes.
Thank you.
Mayor?
But nothing stops us. I mean, we heard a little bit about overlay districts. I mean, I think this is all new to us. This ordinance isn't, I mean, this is a baseline, but if we decided down the road, like, we get a better understanding of, and I think you mentioned it, Mr. Hedges, the information that we've collected from other planning departments across the country and locally is that, there are high-use parking. These places tend to be a destination more like a general business as opposed to a neighborhood business where, parking in neighborhood businesses is almost non-existent, at least in my neighborhood, very, very little. But you're gonna have a lot of traffic where maybe roads and streets and all of that aren't designed to handle it. But nothing prevents us, let's say, a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, once we get a grip on how the market is in Royal Oak, to say, oh yeah, there's a little area here we'd like to do an overlay on, because it's not demanding. Ferndale's a place everyone's driving to, or Pontiac, we're more local in neighborhood, and therefore we could change that classification to neighborhood business, correct? I mean, there's nothing that this ordinance prevents
There's nothing
us.
preventing you from updating the ordinance. In fact, we did bring this up at some of the previous meetings specifically regarding the 1,000-foot setback. If after it's implemented, it finds that may be too strict of a standard, it could be lowered to 700, 800, 600, 500 feet.
Right.
Whatever, between uses in a school or between retail uses.
Yeah. The example I always give is the Starbucks on Woodward.
Yeah.
We just didn't realize that people would, well, I don't know, I'm pretty thrifty, but, Starbucks is good coffee, no offense to Starbucks fans, but, people would just line up at 8 a.m. for a $10 cup of coffee or whatever it costs. I mean, we just applied the normal drive-through and everything was fine, but we've learned a few things. So we do have those issues pop up, and this is, I'm not saying that we're gonna equate Starbucks to this, but there is a lot we don't know as far as traffic patterns and procurement behaviors and, how willing people are to drive. And then also, too, what are other communities doing? Maybe this is something that becomes as localized as a liquor store, right? I mean, nothing against Berkeley. I'm not driving to Berkeley to buy my beer. I go to, one of two stores that are literally right in my neighborhood,
And you walk there, of course, because it's close by.
Well, I walk there. Often, I'm out, so I have to walk. No, I'm kidding.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a,
And just one more clarification. I think there were a lot of questions that came up tonight that I think were really good. A lot of those are gonna have to be addressed in the local ordinance as well as the licensing. So we're trying to confine, because this body here is really, charged with zoning and not, some of the other things that were mentioned that would be addressed under the local ordinance or licensing
requirements.
Mr. Casada?
So what is the process here? You've provided these proposed text amendments. Is this an action item that we're required to say yes or no at this hearing?
Your options are you can recommend it to the city commission as written. You could recommend it to the city commission with specified revisions. You can always postpone it, review it again at an upcoming meeting, or the final option is, you can reject everything. Those are essentially your four options.
All right, can I make a comment? We heard some comments from, sound like knowledgeable people here who offered us additional information, which we haven't seen yet. I think I would appreciate that. So
We've actually received over, just guessing, but more than 15, less than 25 submittals from members of the public on what they feel should be included in the ordinance. Quite frankly, if we included all of it, it would be a mess. We've been over, this is probably the most input we've received on any zoning ordinance amendment since I've been here. We've been inundated with not just people offering opinions for or against, but people actually submitting specific ordinance language to us. It's, as I said, we've received more than necessary, to be frank.
In addition to doing your own research?
Yes.
With other communities?
So that's
other
why we haven't
states?
forwarded everything we have received to you, because
I can understand that, yes. But, I mean, we're being asked to vote on it, so, I mean.
Sure, I understand.
That's my comment.
But our first and our primary purpose in drafting it has been to respond to the direction from the city commission at the work session we had with them in July, to the 3 previous meetings we've had with this body, and also the survey. Those are where we've taken our primary direction from, not necessarily some of the suggestions that have been submitted by the public. We have taken a few that we found that we could work our way into, but as I said, we can't digest everything that's been sent to us, because some of them are, I mean, they're very broad across the spectrum on what to do.
I would imagine.
So. But again, just as your options as with any zoning, change to zoning, again, it's a recommendation to the city commission. You can recommend it as written, you can amend with specified changes, or just table it and bring it back to a future meeting.
Mr. Casada?
I'm gonna move to table this and bring it back at a future meeting.
Motion by Mr. Casada. Is there support? No support? Motion dies. Is there another motion? Mr. Godek?
Can I ask Mr. Casada, what changes you'd like to see after it gets tabled? Are you looking for more?
I think some of the input that I heard tonight gave me reason to do some more study. And I'd like to do that, but, I'm just one member. I'm not feeling real comfortable with what I'm voting on.
I was just, are there any specifics that?
Well, I raised one of the issues, and I realize that may have about what it means. I appreciate the fact that there's a liquor license system, but I'm not sure that's the same as what we're talking about here, because it's a zoning ordinance. And we heard some other comments today about, the green infrastructure. I thought that was interesting. I'd like to look at that. I'm not against green infrastructure, but I wonder what the impact of this would be. I just heard some things I'd like to think about.
Thanks.
Is there another motion? Ms. Douglas?
I'm going to move to approve the resolution that to recommend these text amendments to the city commission.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Mr. Godek to recommend sending the existing text amendments as provided to us this evening to the commission. Is there discussion on that motion? Ms. Beaky?
I guess, obviously this is all new, and obviously we have a state law, and then it's very important how we address this as a municipality. And again, the zoning is about the land use, and we keep talking about the licensing, that's something else. I guess if we refer this on to the city commission, and I know the city commission is often handling many, many different activities, I'm just wondering, a little bit to your point about tabling, I realize it's not our role to like look at the licensing and this, but again, when I was doing my original research, many of the points I brought up it was said that those are going to be addressed someplace else. But to give us confidence in how we're voting, I wonder, should we be seeing also that other language, or we're simply going to let the commission do that due diligence in terms of both aspects, along obviously with all this diligent staff work. So I'm reasonably confident to pass it along, assuming the commission's going to have enough time, I guess. I don't know if you have another study session or how that's relating, because it seems like it's a very big picture. So I could feel somewhat comfortable about these things that we've talked about a lot here, knowing that a lot of these other questions that keep coming up are getting addressed through some other process, which, again, we're not necessarily participating in, other members.
Mayor?
I think to maybe help answer that question, I think what the commission is looking for is a recommendation from this body to really, say, okay, kind of having that background understanding of where, things could go with the local ordinance or with licensing. I mean, it's kind of chicken or egg, right? I think that what we're looking for is, okay, from a very basic perspective, that map. Where do you believe that these businesses are appropriate, at least out of the gate? Are they appropriate in residential? I think we'd probably all agree. No, we probably don't want to have any business in a neighborhood. So is it general business? Is it neighborhood business? Was there an overlay approach? I don't know that we've really talked about, and that's probably more of a master plan issue to talk about, if we do have economically deprived areas from a commercial perspective, we would probably look at that in a little different context. But I think we're looking for that feedback, and then also some of the other things that, typically come with zoning, like, the distances, and is 1,000 feet enough? Should it be 10 feet? And then we can take that as a consideration from planning, and what does that mean in terms of, the planning experts say these are appropriate uses, then what do we do as far as licensing, local ordinances, things like that address some of the overall, I won't say concerns or opportunities that we have with this new legislation.
Mr. Godek?
I'm probably going to vote no on this, but even though I supported the motion, just I think if our time frame is more along the lines of February, I think we could, so that the city commission can look at both licensing and zoning at a similar time, that maybe we have another, at least one more go at this with maybe looking at, does green infrastructure make sense on a retail establishment on Woodward? Those kind of things might be hard to keep in here. I think this is, on using the mayor's terminology of 10,000 foot view, I think we're being overly restrictive, but that's not a bad way to start, because then you can open up the spigot slowly and see what needs to be changed. But if Commissioner Casada was to make a motion to table again, I would be supporting of that. I don't think I'd like to send this on just yet.
Mayor?
Yeah, and I appreciate that consideration. There's also, you know, we want to leave time so that if the commission has a basic framework or basic piece of clay to work with from zoning, we can always kick it back too. And I think we can kick it back in the context of what we discussed from a local ordinance or from a licensing perspective. So the challenge that we have is that it's always iterative, right? So, you know, we can go back and say, hey, well, I know planning recommended this. Can you have them look at these 3 or 4 things and bring it back to us? So you're not wrong. I'm just saying there's other considerations too that need to take place because it's at some point, and we decided to go with zoning first, and that's why we engaged the planning commission, because that seemed to be the easiest thing to address. And also the thing that required the most time considerations, considering planning only meets, you know, once a month. So the local ordinance and the licensing can all be done at the commission's privilege, you know? So that's the only other consideration to think of. I'm not saying you're wrong, Mr. Godek. I'm just saying that things can get kicked back, pushing off the timeline.
I wouldn't feel bad if you told me I was wrong.
Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, I'm not sure what we would change a month from now. I mean, I'm not hearing from anybody at this table, maybe green infrastructure, any serious objections to any elements of this approach. And I will say that the concept of dealing with this through zoning did come from the city commission in general, through a strong recommendation by our legal staff that they felt like that was the most controllable and I will say defensible approach. So, I mean, if we have a reason to table this, I mean, if there's some specific strong element that somebody wants to look at, I'd like to hear it. But other than that, this is our, third look at this. We had fourth. We had 8 people come tonight, 4 of which work in the marijuana industry or appear to in some way, shape, or form. And I will say that I pushed this out through like 5 or 6 social media groups announcing the date and time of the hearing, the general subject matter, kind of the general approach we're going to be taking. And I honestly thought we would be swamped. And I think the lack of response from the general public indicates general acceptance of our direction.
Or,
It's cold.
no, I'm.
You're not wrong, Dan.
Or people are ready to move forward with us making a decision, and there could be a level of trust in government. Sometimes that applies, I hope, that we're thoughtful and we're taking action to do the right thing. This is very new for everybody. It's hard to make comparisons with something like this that we have to start somewhere, and we're starting very conservatively. So, I mean, we could table and table and table because we don't understand a lot of this because it's new to us. I think we are thoughtful, and I think we are taking deliberate steps, and we've asked a lot of really good questions. For me, I will support it because I think it's time to move this forward. I do have a few questions in here, some minor questions. The green infrastructure thing, to me, of all people, was weird because why aren't we requiring it of everybody? I think it's short-sighted to just throw it in here and punish a business that they have to do something because it's new to the community. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it should be a standard that we should hold everybody accountable to. So that's my comment, and I'm hoping the 2 commissioners at the table here will maybe think about that when it gets to their table. So I'll be supporting this because of that. I think it's time to move it forward, and I think we have been very deliberate and thoughtful. I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking, you know, it's new, so. Yeah, Ms. Beakey and then Mr. Godek.
I just wanted to agree. I like also that the green infrastructure was added here, and I agree with you that maybe it should be more broadly applied across the board. And I also think our discussions have been good about keeping this relatively restricted now in terms of setbacks and such, and also in terms of neighborhoods as far as industrial and general business. again, as a starting point, I'm more comfortable with something that's more conservative. And again, I look forward to the licensing and the other aspects that are gonna round this out to address other concerns. But for moving this forward from our discussions, I think I'm pretty comfortable with most of what's in here, and so I'd look forward to moving it forward. And then maybe we can send our comments on to commission to make sure they get in there, because this is not the last review. So it's still in process, so.
Mr. Godek?
There seems to be some consistent comments about taking green infrastructure out of this document.
Oh, no.
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 Okay, I misunderstood you.
We would like to put it into more documents.
Right, to make it more a broad.
It should be a city standard,
Right.
and not just.
Not in this particular
Right.
document, but a city standard, so.
But also in the case, I think, of this new, oh, sorry, I jumped in. Is it okay? There's these kind of new businesses, and I think some of the other restrictions we are looking towards in terms of aesthetic of the establishments. I think if we're going forward with marijuana in Royal Oak, I'd like to see high quality, and I think this comes into it to a certain degree in terms of the style or the aesthetic, as well as the quality that's there. I think the green infrastructure sends a sign in that direction.
Well, I do too. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm going to expect to see it in other places going forward as we move forward as a city. I think that those expectations are well-founded.
Got the right people elected to do it, so we can get there.
That's what we're counting on. Anybody else? So there is a motion, and there has been support. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of moving this forward to the commission, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
So 1, 2, 3, 4 to 2? 2 noes? Okay. So it passes. Good discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hedges. I know you put a lot of work into this.
We did, not just me, but Mr. Murphy and Mr. Twing as well.
Okay, we do have another item under new business. This is a public hearing also to rezone from general business to neighborhood business at 111 North Main Street, 121 North Main Street, in a portion of 309 North Main Street. Mr. Hedges.
This concerns the rezoning of these 3 properties on North Main Street that was recommended by the commission as part of our discussion on the text amendments for marijuana uses. These 3 properties are the only ones in the city of Royal Oak zone general business that are not either on Woodward Avenue or Coolidge Highway north of 14 Mile. It was suggested previously to research rezoning these to neighborhood business in response to the proposed text amendments for the marijuana uses. Also in reference that the conditions that required these properties to be zoned general business are no longer applicable. One of these sites, well, 2 of them were probably, aren't believe they were zoned general business in the last zoning ordinance and map adoption in 2001 due to 2 existing businesses that were there that are no longer located there. One was an automobile dealership, the other was a lawn and garden supply store. Those 2 uses were not allowed in neighborhood business, but they were allowed in general business. So we believe that's why this block was at first zone general business. However, those businesses are no longer there. So there's no reason to keep them zone general business, to keep an existing business from becoming non-conforming. The change in zoning would not affect any of the existing uses that are there. The religious institution at 309 Main Street and also the restaurant at 129 North Main Street would remain permitted uses. They're permitted uses in general business. They're also permitted uses in neighborhood business, so it would not affect either of those in any way. The multiple family development at 111 North Main is actually non-conforming in the general business district. It would remain so in neighborhood business. The condition that makes it non-conforming is its off-street parking that fronts on both 11 Mile and North Main Street. The property was developed and built, and then the standard prohibiting street front parking on a ground level was added after this development was built. So it's why it became non-conforming, but it would still remain a non-conforming use in general business, or excuse me, in neighborhood business as well. One last item to point out is the religious institution at 309 East Main Street. The rezoning would only affect the eastern portion of it. If you notice on the aerial photograph that the building for the property extends on both the east and west portion. And there's also some open space and a parking lot and a playground on the west portion, but the rezoning would only affect the east portion. At the resolution included in our staff report, we provide the legal description that will specifically apply only to the east portion of the property. The west parts of the site will remain zoned one-family residential as they currently are.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. Any questions? Okay, not seeing, this is a public hearing, so I will open up the public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to comment on this? Not seeing, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to this side. And Doug, it looks like you've got a recommended.
Yeah, our resolution that we've provided in our staff reports, pretty much the generic resolution we include for all conventional rezonings. The subpoints reference the criteria for changes in the zoning map in section 770129 of the zoning ordinance. It also addresses the address, parcel ID numbers of the properties, as well as a legal description for the east half of 309 North Main Street. But the subparagraphs in the resolution, again, reflect back to the criteria in the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hedges? Is there a motion?
I should also point out, again, this is a recommendation to the city commission to change the zoning of these properties. So this will be
So
forward.
you'll need a motion to make that recommendation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Casada,
I move to make the recommendation as proposed.
is there support?
I support.
Support by Ms. Beaky. Any discussion? Okay, there's a motion of support to move this to the city commission. There's been a resolution that's been accepted. Is there any discussion on this? Not seeing, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay. And then we've got two more items on our agenda. Item 3 under F is a meeting schedule and religious holidays. Mr. Hedges, any conflicts?
We did not notice any. There are a few religious holidays that fall on meeting dates next year, but based on the information we gather from the interfaith calendar from that organization, none of them are recognized as major or significant holidays on their calendar, which is also attached to our staff reports.
Okay.
The typical resolution is included unless the commission doesn't want to change any of the dates. They'll have to, mention which dates you would like to change within the resolution.
Do you need a motion to adopt that resolution?
Yes, we do.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Godek. Support?
Second.
Support by the mayor. Any discussion? Seeing all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, our calendar for next year has been approved. And then you've got some administrative site plan approvals. Is this an FYI?
That's just FYI item. No actions required.
Any questions on these for Mr. Hedges?
Oh, very interesting to read through.
You think they do work for us? Look at all the other stuff, right?
Over 150 a
So
year.
many, so many.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Douglas. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Cruzado. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.